Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the January 14th Tigard City Council meeting. As you can tell, Mayor Lube is absent this evening, so I will be presiding over this evening's meeting. Appreciate the opportunity to just dive right into my role as council president. But with that, I will call this meeting to order. And I will ask Deputy City Recorder Raimondo to complete the roll.
Council President Wolf.
Here.
Youth Councilor Manini.
Here.
Councilor Gadusi.
Present.
Councilor Hoop.
Here.
Councilor Robbins.
Here.
Councilor Schlack.
Here.
Councilor Shaw.
Here.
And Mayor Lube is excused.
Thank you. And with that, I ask all my fellow councilors and staff to mute their mics, and please stand and join me on the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Council members and City Manager Reimer, are there any non-agenda items?
Nothing from us, Council President.
Nothing here. Very good. Okay, we will move on to proclamations and recognitions. And Mr. Tu, you're welcome to come up. Our proclamation this evening is a celebration of the Vietnamese American New Year of the Snake. The start of the new year falls on January 29th. And this year, as I just said, we acknowledge the snake as the zodiac animal. I was very excited last year. I'm a dragon. And so the representation of the snake is a symbol of rebirth, healing, and protection. And at that, I want to hand it over to Mr. Tu, and thank you for being here this evening.
Good evening, Council President Wolf and the city councilors. My name is Thao Từ. I am the president of the Vietnamese Community of Oregon. On behalf of the board of the Vietnamese Community of Oregon, thank you kindly for recognition of the Vietnamese American Lunar New Year celebration. And this year we will celebrate the New Year at McDaniel High School on February 1st, 2025. We welcome all of you to join with us. Thank you again for the acknowledgement of our pride and our cultural tradition as symbolized by the event.
Mr. Tu, did you want a picture with council with the proclamation? Okay. All of it. That, and I think, oh, thank you so much.
Oh, we each get one.
Oh my gosh, well, we will swap.
Yeah.
Should we do it this way, or should we exchange first? Your call. Okay, I love it. All right, now we're going to mix it up. Okay. Very good. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is public comment. The call-in number this evening is 503-966-4101. Those wishing to comment should call now to get into the queue. Anyone present wanting to comment should sign up on the public comment form at the front of the room, and I believe I have that already. But I will confirm there were no written comments received by the appropriate time, which is Monday at noon. And we will move forward with public comment in person. And I am only pausing because I'm appreciating. Mr. Tu, did you want to comment again in public comment? Or did you sign up so that you could speak during the proclamation?
Yeah, I already said thank you.
Okay. Yes. Yes, thank you so much. So I want to call up Dan Hayes. And just as a reminder, thank you so much. The public comment protocol, you have 2 minutes and have the timer up there as well. And if you would state your name and the purpose of your public comment, and then you have 2 minutes. Thank you.
My name is Dan Hayes. I'm here to talk about traffic enforcement in the Benchview Terrace neighborhood. So again, my name is Dan Hayes. I live at 13957 Southwest Mistletoe Drive. We've lived there for over 10 years, and in the last 2 years, the amount of traffic increase has been extreme. I'm asking you today to help me save our neighborhood. We all know that if you travel along Tiedemann, it's a 25-mile-an-hour speed zone. It's strictly enforced, and you will get a speeding ticket. There's 1 school, 3 businesses, and 8 houses from Walnut to the Starbucks near 217. Benchview Terrace along Mistletoe, Hillshire, or Benchview, you need to go just 2 blocks to get to get at least 8 houses. Yet the traffic along Hillshire, Benchview, and Mistletoe exceeds Tiedemann, I've checked. Let me give you a couple of data points. A middle school neighborhood kid stands on the corner to wait for the bus near my house. They play a game each morning. How many cars will run the stop sign? The other morning, over 51 cars ignored the stop sign. These kids stand less than 2 feet away from that stop sign intersection. Neighbor and I have been tracking speed with an over-the-counter speed gun. I have a copy of it here. Over 8,500 speed gun data points were recorded by us. Of those 8,741 data points, 99% were over 20 miles per hour. Over 2,000, almost 3,000 of those data points were 50 miles an hour. That's 31% that were 50 miles an hour or higher. It is clear during the data point, the peak times in the morning and the afternoon are remarkably consistent in the number of cars that travel those Benchview and Hillshire roads and the speed categories in which we recorded them. That means that our neighborhood is being used as a commute route. I know this to be true because I've followed some folks and they are traveling to work. This is a neighborhood that's been around for a long time. It is an important tax base. I know I'm over my time. I'm asking you to please help me save the city. Impress upon city planner, or the engineer, Ms. Furman, to meet with me to see the data point and begin enforcement. Please ask the police department to help us with traffic enforcement. Thanks to those officers who have already helped us. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and then our second and final public comment speaker this evening is Crystal Weston. And Crystal, I know that you are more than familiar with public comment procedures, and our time limit is 2 minutes. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the chance to speak today in front of the Tigard City Council. Good evening, Council President Wolf and members of the Tigard City Council. My name is Crystal Weston. I'm here today as a private citizen and not as a member of the Tigard-Tualatin School District Board. And I wanted to share my thoughts about the potential purchase of the Fusus surveillance system by body cam and taser maker Axon. First, I appreciate Police Chief McDonald's proactive work in bringing this forward for consideration in a thoughtful way. At the same time, this brings up questions for me. First, I am unsure about ongoing costs that compete with funding for police officers who are on the ground upholding public safety. We may have funds as a city now, but with inflationary pressures on local governments, that may change, and a person is generally a better use of funds than a camera, in my view. Additionally, considering the unpredictability of the incoming federal administration, I worry that the city of Tigard may sign up for a helpful anti-theft system that could become a warrantless police surveillance system with AI capability that federal officials may gain access to. This could undermine privacy and safety, especially for young people, immigrants, women, and people of color. I think at the least, this should be considered on a longer time frame to allow more certainty of the bigger context we are operating within. And thank you again for the opportunity to comment, for all of your thoughtful decision-making, and for the chance to be here today to speak with you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Crystal. So our final public comment is phone-in or video. And I will ask Deputy City Recorder Raimondo, do we have any video or phone call-in comments?
Not at this time, Council President.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, moving forward to the City Manager report, and I'll hand it off to City Manager Reimer.
Thanks, Council President. Well, good evening, Council President, members of the council, members of the community, and my teammates. Just a few updates for you here before you jump into your agenda. First, this is something that the council's aware of. Want to make sure the community, we keep reiterating this, our Community Events and Social Services Grant Program is now open. And so it's open from now until February 15th, 2025. And so those interested can go to our website to find out more information, and we encourage anyone who is interested in that to learn more about it, as well as apply for the grants that we make available each and every year. A couple of 2024 library statistics I've received from our library director. Some pretty amazing numbers here. In 2024, we welcomed 239,628 visitors, which is a 5% increase from the previous year to the library. This number would have been even greater, though we have not counted those attending just the Burgess Room or going to have a snack or a meal at the Opportunity Cafe. So kudos to our library for continuing to be the key hub where our community comes together, and we serve all members equally there. So thank you to the team, and thank you, Director Halstead. Also, as part of that, our teammates created 2,916 library cards. This is the highest number that we've created since the pandemic. And so, once again, it just, the importance of our library just continues year after year, and you can see the great numbers we had last year. And finally, I'll conclude my remarks with a quote that we received. We often receive quotes from our library users of just the great work they receive, or the great service. So this is after a community member received help from our adult reference librarian. This person indicated, "I've got to tell you that your library is the best one I've been in. Your focus is on the people who come in and making them feel comfortable," which is exactly what we're trying to do as a community. And so thank you very much, Halstead and the team, for all of your efforts day in and day out, week in and week out, and year out. So thanks. That concludes my remarks. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, City Manager Reimer. Council, any questions, comments on this report? And again, Halstead, I will say thank you as well for everything you do, and it really is an anchor in our community, so appreciate the work you all are doing. So at this point, we will move forward to the consent agenda. The consent agenda is used for routine items, including minutes and approval of contracts or intergovernmental agreements. Information on each item is available on the city's website in the packet for this meeting. Items may be enacted in one motion or without a separate discussion. And we have one item on the consent, and that is the resolution of support for pursuing the 2025 RACE grant for 72nd Avenue, which is the area between 99W and Dartmouth Street. And then we do have Principal Transportation Planner Gerke available for questions should there be one.
Council President, I'd like to move to approve the consent agenda as presented.
I second the motion.
It has been moved and seconded. With that, all those any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries by unanimous vote of the council. Thank you all, and we will move to our next item, which is board appointments. Assistant to the City Manager Hendricks will present the report, and yay for our community members that are becoming engaged or continuing in different areas.
Thanks. Yeah, good evening, Council President Wolf and Council. Good to see you. Again, my name is Nicole Hendricks, Assistant to the City Manager. So tonight we just have a couple board and committee appointments for your consideration. These were opportunities on our Audit Committee and Library Board to fill vacant voting positions with current alternates. So these alternates have good standings with their committees, and the mayor's recommendation is for them to move into these voting positions on their committees. And we have invited the volunteers here tonight, so I see a couple in the audience back there, and Kelly's right there. So just want to take a moment to say thank you. We appreciate your service and your interest in continuing on. And so tonight, because they have been members, we won't do the photos and the pinning, but unless Kelly wants to. Okay, she said no. So we'll just have you do the resolutions, and with that, I'll hand it back to you.
Okay, very good. Excited that you all continue to expand and participate in our work. That's what I think makes city government thrive, is community engagement. So thank you so much. And I will entertain a motion.
Council President Wolf, I move to approve resolution number 25-02.
I'll second the motion.
Will the Deputy City Recorder Raimondo please read the name and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 25-02, a resolution appointing Kelly Pement as voting member of the Audit Committee.
Thank you. Youth Councilor Mainini, will you give an advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion is adopted by a full unanimous vote of the council. Okay, yay! Kelly, truly, thank you so much for your commitment to budget audit, really important areas for the city, so thank you. Okay, and then we move forward, back to you, Nicole. Or I don't know.
One more
Oh,
resolution. for your
yes.
consideration. Yeah.
I'm looking, see, this is the downside. I was looking at my own slides going, well, no, you got to put the other one up there. As Nicole had mentioned, then we have our library board, two individuals, Pam and Lily, and would someone then entertain a motion?
Council President Wolf, I move to approve resolution number 25-03.
I second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Deputy City Recorder Raimondo, would you please read the names and number of the resolution?
Resolution number 25-03, a resolution appointing Pam Michael and Lee Diaz as voting members of the Library Board.
Excellent. Youth Councilor Mainini, would you give an advisory vote?
Aye.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries by unanimous vote of the council. Okay. Yay, thank you. All right, moving on to the next agenda item is Assistant to the City Manager Hendricks remains. This is the Tigard service request. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Thanks for having me. So I am super excited to be here tonight to talk to you about a new system called Tigard Service Request. So a little bit about Tigard Service Request. If my screen will allow me to go forward, thank you. So Tigard Service Request is an online portal for community members to request non-emergency place-based services at their convenience. So this portal is going to go live in 2 weeks on Tuesday, January 28th. And the reason we're doing this is to help modernize our city services. So that includes enhancing some customer experience and service delivery. And this is part of the 2023-25 council goal to modernize city services. And it is a Tyler technology project. So it's talking Tyler again. A little bit more about the portal. So what community members will be able to do is submit requests for services such as abandoned stored vehicles, park or trail maintenance, tree issues, walk bike improvements, water issues. The list goes on. I think we have about 20 different request types that people can submit. They'll also be able to get email notifications about their requests. So when they submit a request, they'll get a ticket number, they'll get updates if staff or team members add comments, and then when their request closes, they'll get an email for that too. They'll be able to view requests reported throughout the city. So if other people have submitted a request, they can check and see, oh, someone already submitted that request, or at least someone's aware, the city's aware that it's been submitted. And then also be able to track multiple requests because it is kind of this ticketing system. And I'll go into each of these a little bit more when I give a little demo here in a second. Some helpful tips when using the system that we want to highlight. So we are asking for a phone number and an email. This is so that the automation of the system works, that you do get those follow-ups from us, that we can give you a call if we have follow-up in the field, that we just want to give you a quick call. So we are asking for those items. Also, having an address for the request or the location, being as specific as possible, helps us figure out where the issue is. So if you have an address or even a photo, that's super helpful. And then we're not requiring this, but folks can set up an account. And that will allow, there's a couple benefits. One, it'll allow you to track your requests more easily because it compiles them all. You're not anonymous, so it'll be in one place. Another piece is that you will be able to follow different requests. So like I mentioned, you'll be able to view all the different requests that have been submitted, but if one's of particular interest to you, you can click follow and it'll pop up in your request so you can keep an eye on things. And then the last piece of this, last benefit, is pre-populating some of the fields that are your email and name, so it just kind of expedites the submittal process for you. So again, not required, but something that you might get some benefits from. We are recommending when you submit a request to use a laptop or a desktop. We tested the mobile experience, we've tested the tablet experience. It's less than ideal, so we're really recommending, it's possible, but user experience-wise, it's not the best. So we're recommending laptop or desktop. And then a reminder that even though you can submit requests whenever you want, we will be monitoring these during business hours. So you can submit it 24/7, but we will be addressing them during business hours. Just a high level of how the process works when we get a request. So that top row is the external community member experience. So they'll submit a ticket, they'll get an email confirmation, they might get an email or a phone call from a team member like I mentioned, and then they'll get that closeout email. And then internally, there's a lot of cool features that we're taking advantage of. That request is submitted, there's that automated email confirmation that happens. The team will go in and verify the information they need is there, such as an address or a location. And then there's tasks on the backside that the team member can do or are automated. So things like creating a work order for our team to go out and fix something, or doing a site investigation, things like that. Once those tasks are completed, it will close the request automatically and send the email out to the community member, letting them know that we've resolved their request. So it's one thing to talk about it, but I do want to show you what the portal looks like. So I am going to start with, this is our City of Tigard website. And right now, a lot of our collateral is pushing people to this webpage because we have a lot of flexibility on our own site to be able to educate people on what the system will need and what the experience is like. So people can learn more about the portal on this website, some basics of what do I need to complete a request, what kind of things can I report. This is a very comprehensive FAQ that's broken out into different categories about accounts and maps and how-to guides. Every question that we've gotten from community outreach so far and our team members, like we've put it here in an organized fashion. So if you have a question, this is a good place to start. And then once the portal goes live in a couple weeks, we'll have a big button here for people to press to access the portal. So the portal is right here. This is a test environment, so they won't see test 2, but they'll see this version, this setup. And there's 3 key components here. The first is where you would go to submit a request. So it says request non-emergency services when convenient for you. Again, requests are not monitored 24/7, and we'll address those during business hours. And then just a key note that, if there's an emergency, dial 911. So I'll take you to this request creation page in a second, but I'll just feature these other two tiles. This is the area that people can go to see what else has been reported in the community. So I'll show you that after I submit a request. And then this last tile is to sign in or sign up for an account, which I mentioned not required, but you have a few of those benefits there if you do. So those are the key components to the page. I'll go ahead and create a request. And I'll just allow it to load here really quick. Perfect. So if I click in this box, it'll pull down all the different request types options that we have. You'll see they're in alphabetical order. We have things from abandoned stored vehicle, debris, trash, a dog park issue. The list goes on. You can search for requests if you know what the list is already compiled of, but it is one tool, and we do try to be intentional about how long that list was, right? We want to keep it as short so no one's trying to look for what category to submit it in. So anyways, the list goes on. For this, I'll do a tree issue. So I'll select that. And once I select it, depending on the request, it'll show different things that we'll ask for. The next piece on this request form is a location. It's a mapping component. If you have an exact address, this is where you would put it. If you don't, you can just keep moving along. We ask about a location description, and we realize that not everyone's gonna know the address, so it's okay. If any description below you can give in more detail, that would be helpful, and our team will call and follow up and help figure out what that address is. The map looks like, you'd be able to click and put a pin. That's not the functionality. So we're a little limited there, but if you have an address, great. If not, we can just keep moving. So let's say I don't have an address, but I see that there's tree, branch, I'm making this up, looks like it's about to fall. And the location description, so let's say I saw that at Tigard City Hall, and maybe it's near Hall Boulevard. So I can type in that description there. Whoop, typing in front of people is a little nerve-wracking there. Okay, so then you have the option to add an image. So if I had a photo, I would upload it here. Images, again, are super helpful if you have them. And this is the piece that I mentioned earlier of requiring the phone number and email so that we can provide the best customer service possible. And so I'll go ahead and add these items here. Okay, and now that that request is done, I'll go ahead and press submit. And then this pop-up shows, and it says that your request has been submitted, and it notes the request number 846. It says to keep this for your records, but you will also get, if you give us an email, which is required, then we will, you'll also get an email notification. So I'll go ahead and press OK. And once this happens, this is that other tile that I showed on the main page. And you'll see I just got an email as the community member. Here, I'll just show you really quick here. So this is the email that I got as a community member saying this is an automated email. Thank you for submittal with the ticket number and kind of next steps of what to expect. So this is a map of all of the requests that have been submitted that are currently open. Again, this is a test environment, so there's a lot of open requests. But as you zoom in, they cluster, so they'll decluster as you zoom into the map, and you can start to see the areas that things have been reported. Also on the left, you can see more details about what's been reported. And again, I'm not logged in, so I can come in and look at the details of this tree issue that was just reported. And if a team member makes a comment on the internal side of things, they'll see the comment from the team member. So you'll see some follow-up happening, which is helpful in case you are curious about that. And then let's see here. I'm gonna go. Well, I'll leave it there. So that's part of that experience. And then I think for the portal side of things, I think I'll jump back over to just a couple presentation items. So what does this all mean for users and how does it benefit people? So one of the biggest things is convenience, right? So now these requests existed before, but they were all over our beautiful website, right? But they were in different departments, different teams. It's hard to know what department does what. And so now it's just a one-stop shop. Now I can just say, I don't know what the department is, but I know I need to go to this portal to submit the request. And then efficiency. Same kind of thing if you don't know about the department, but also we have that internal routing automated so it gets to the right team right away, and then automating tasks that before, we'd get a request and then we'd follow up to confirm we got the request or things like that. It just kind of streamlines and makes things more efficient. And then from a transparency perspective, getting to see what requests are open in the city, what the team members, how they're responding to the requests, that really helps. We also set up some metrics so that we're going to be measuring a month out, 2 months out to see what requests are really popular, and maybe consider there's maybe some communications pieces that, like, hey, we're seeing a lot of tree issues, maybe we need to do some education around that kind of thing. So that helps us with clear communication. And then enhanced quality of life. This is basically just to point out that ownership of community, right? You see something wrong, you can now report it, and we can get to it, and we're aware of it. So, and then wrapping up here, so we developed a communications plan for the rollout of this portal. We started implementing it a few months ago. We had a few goals with the plan. One was to inform and build awareness with community about the tool, when is it available, how to access it. The second thing was to notify people of change, because this is replacing, if any of you are familiar with our traffic safety reporter, that will be replaced with the service request system. And I do want to note, because I almost called you Council President, Councilor Hu, you asked about the bookmarking a link for utility billing last week. And it's similar in that the traffic safety reporter right now, we don't own that link, so we can't forward it to the new site, but we do have a pop-up message on the site that lets people know change is coming, and when on next week, we'll let people know and have that pop-up still there that to redirect to the web page. So that's how we're kind of working around that piece. And then the third goal was to educate, right? So is to educate. Like, there's a lot of education that needs to be done once we go live. So the how-to documents and the videos we have in English and Spanish, how to create, how to submit a request, how to manage a submitted request. And the way we're achieving these goals is a few different techniques, right? We have the virtual social media, websites. We're going to do a podcast after we go live in case we're getting a lot of questions that need to be answered. Newsletters. Print-wise, we'll have Tigard Life ads, and we did refrigerator magnets, which I put in the back, and little business cards to hand out, and these brochures that kind of list like basics about the service request system. And then in-person events. So yeah, if you know anyone who's interested in learning more about the system, I'm happy to give a presentation on it. And we did go to Committee for Community Engagement and the Park and Rec Advisory Board. I think, yeah, I'm scheduled to go to Transportation Advisory Committee. So, and then asking those folks like, hey, can you distribute brochures, like word of mouth? Any opportunity to let people know about the system is great. And then the last piece, I promise, is just noting the community support resources for navigating. I already mentioned those videos and the how-to page. Those are available on that website that I featured. And then we'll have 2 drop-in support sessions at the library technology room on February 1st from 10 to 11, and then February 5th from 12 to 1. I'll be there, and we'll have a Spanish interpreter there as well. So if you just need someone to help guide you, we're happy to help. And then we will have an online feedback form too. So if you're really wishing you saw a certain request, or like why, just general feedback about the system. We're all about continuous improvement, so we're happy to get that feedback. And then I do want to thank, this has been years in the making, so we're very excited about this, and there's a lot of people to thank, Ben is here in the audience. Carrie is right behind him. Sally is our project manager. Will has done all the training guides. We have a whole DNC team who's been doing all of this collateral. And we had a bunch of testers who like tried to break the system. I think they submitted over 800 requests. Like, there's so many people involved in this, and it's just really, I'm just really excited. So anyways, just want to say thanks to the team, and I will hand it over to you.
That was great. It's very exciting, and I appreciate it. I loved being able to track the different tickets. But with that, actually, I'll move to council to see if you have any questions, comments. Yes, Councilor Strack.
Thank you, Council President Wolf, and thank you to the team for all the work that you've done on this. I really enjoy the fact that we're taking all these different forms and putting them into one spot, and that'll make the user experience so much better, I think. And I also really appreciate, as always, the in-person opportunities to train people, because I know there are a lot of people in our community who maybe are not comfortable with digital change, and so having those in-person touch points to walk people through some of these changes, I think, is just a really valuable thing. Two questions. One, I'm curious to the point on in-person help, since we just had the utility billing rollout, how that rollout, what we learned from that rollout that influenced the rollout of this rollout, because I
Right.
imagine there's going to be some overlap, and it looked similar, but I'd love to hear if there was anything specific that we learned from that that influenced this.
Yeah, so the utility billing rollout was definitely a template for this rollout, so you'll see a lot of those similar techniques. I think one of the things that we need to keep in mind as we do rollout is be listening to the kinds of questions that we're getting and change our communications messaging or platform if we're getting specific questions that we haven't covered. So being able to pivot if we need to in terms of our communications plan, I think is a big lesson from what we had planned for utility billing, and then just needing to make sure we feature certain things to help guide people. So yes, utility billing was definitely an example that we can get to learn from.
And I appreciate the continuous improvement, to your point, on pivoting and responding to the needs of the community there. One other question, it's sort of a process question. If we go back to the slide of how service requests work, it looks like the way I read this is just that there's two separate workflows, but I feel like that's not accurate. A person submits the ticket.
Right.
And yes, there's an external experience of how we confirm things, but ultimately it's going to stay open in our system until we do the work. Am I interpreting that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay.
This is how my process mine works, so I appreciate you asking for that clarification. And yeah, you're right.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Terrific. That's just the software company
Yeah.
employee
Yep.
part of me. Wanted to confirm that part of the workflow. Well,
Non-software employee.
yeah, well, thank you all so much for your fantastic work on this. And one request, please keep me in mind for the team that tries to break the next system. That sounds like a fun time. So, thank you.
Oh my gosh. Duly noted. I can tell. Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, Council President Wolf and Assistant City Manager Hendricks. I've been a big fan and waiting in the wings for this to happen. Just want to thank all the staff for this great work. Excited. I will not volunteer to try and break it, but I do have this ability to break software, so I'll let you know. Perhaps just a couple of questions. One, we had a community member earlier who talked about speed on a particular street in Tigard, and I know Police Chief McDonald spoke to him, so thank you, Chief. Is that a request that could go into this system?
So right now, a lot of the requests are public works-based or traffic safety related. So I did want to pull it up just to show. Let me see if I can get to it quickly, sorry. I'm not going to be able to get to it quickly. Back here. So you'll see a couple things around speeding is there. You'll see like traffic signal repair, a couple things like that. So they can use this system. If there's something missing from this list, we can get that through the form or different concepts to evaluate and see if they need to be added. But yes, speeding is on the list.
Thank you very much. And then also just a reminder, you'd mentioned laptop and desktop, and I know Director of Library Services is here, Halstead, but we also have the computers at the library. So folks can always go to the library to utilize the computers to put in their requests. So again, thank you all to the team. This is exciting, and to Councilor Schock, who's going to be volunteering to try and stump you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Shaw, and Councilor Hu.
Thank you, Council President Wolf, and thank you, Nicole. Yeah, a couple questions. So we know that this form can be used for traffic complaints. How about code enforcement complaint? Can we use that too?
So that's something that we are exploring. The other module, Tyler module that's coming soon, is our permitting and licensing system. So we started conversations around code compliance cases being entered through here, and then using our permitting and licensing system to manage those. So that could be a future iteration of this.
Okay.
Yeah.
And you mentioned that user can submit requests without providing exact address or no address at all. So after this request is being reviewed by city teammate, they will update it by providing the address, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
so we would give them a call or reach out and ask them to try to give a specific, and once we locate the address, we will edit it in the back end, and it will appear on the mapping function. And
Good.
yeah, we'll add it to the system.
So do you know that as a user try to input their request, I don't want to say complaint, but request, does the system provide a real-time check of other maps to see if it's a similar request that the area has been already submitted?
Oh, yes. So.
Okay, great.
Yeah, let's see if I can show you really quick. So if I select tree issue, so it's the same request that I just submitted, and I type in our city hall address, because I submitted this request the other day, this is what will happen. It'll ask you, hey, we think this might have been reported already.
Excellent.
Do you want to, yeah.
Excellent. So that's why, damn, can't trick you, huh? Nah, I'm glad you thought of everything, so I'm really happy to hear. So finally, if person doesn't want to use computer, they can still call in to make requests, right? Okay.
Yes, so yeah, if you don't feel comfortable submitting the request, you can call our team and we can submit the request on your behalf.
Okay.
Yeah.
And the mobile version, maybe it's still under improvement, just not quite ready yet. Is that what you're saying? Okay.
Yeah, so if we're seeing that there are a lot of mobile users, because you're out in the field and you want to be able to report it, and we're hearing a lot of difficulties, there is a separate Tyler application that we can look into and explore a mobile app.
Got
but
it.
we
So-
need to look into
alright.
that more. Yep.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you
Yeah.
so much.
Thanks.
Great. You, Councilor Mainini?
This is more just a curiosity, but let's say you're typing in, like you wrote your request, and you wrote your number and your email, but you accidentally did a typo. Would it tell you immediately you had a typo, or would it just like not work?
So it would probably accept the request with the typo. It probably wouldn't be able to tell you, oh, hey, you made a typo. So something you can do if you're not getting that follow-up email with the request number, there might be that typo. I'm trying to think if there's another way for staff to know if it's a typo, but it's hard to know when an email is or isn't. So it's a good question. I would just say, yeah, take it slow or register for an account, and that information will pre-populate for you so you don't have to do it every time. That would be my suggestion.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, good question.
Questions? Councilor Robbins?
Thank you, Council President Wolf. Thank you, Nicole. This is really exciting. It looks like it's been pretty well implemented. I do have a question. What are the plans for reporting on the back end for how many requests we got in a year, or any plans for publicizing any of that so we can let people know what a great job people are doing?
So, yeah, good question. We haven't talked about publicizing the reports that we get, but we have spent a lot of time on those metrics that I mentioned earlier. So that's something that our team can look into, and if it is valuable and the community cares about it, we're happy to see if we can do that. But yeah, I am excited about the information that we can collect and see how we can adapt based on what people are reporting.
Great. And Councilor Gaddusi.
I felt left out. Everyone else is asking a question. I thought I should as well. You had talked about the drop-in support in English and Spanish, but I didn't see you talk about multilingual support of the website itself.
On this portal.
Mm-hmm.
So what is available is up in this corner. They have it's kind of small, I'm sorry, but you can click this, and these are the two options that Tyler provides. We have put in a request for this to be a little bit more robust, because what we've seen is it will translate what's pre-populated by Tyler, but the things that we've configured don't translate. And so that's some work. We've discussed some workarounds, but we're also asking Tyler, hey, could this be a future item? So it's something that we've kept in mind.
Perfect, thank you. And I'd also like to echo Councilor who's concerned about the mobile application. I know that mobile responsiveness is going to be big moving forward, but thank you all.
Noted.
Great work, team. Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Okay, I think the final question that I thought of, great conversation, is there another, Nicole, or did you guys, I'm sure that you.
So
Okay.
we had a lot of conversations on whether or not there should be an other option. Right now, there is not. If that's something that is really needed, we can explore it, but it's really hard to find the right team. You kind of get in the same situation where it's like, well, what team does it go to? And it slows down the process. So this is really about getting it to where it needs to go. And if we have an other, it ends up more of,
Oh, yeah, because as a user, you can also go other,
Yeah,
fire away.
Try to keep it focused on,
So the list looked extensive, and I think it's a great way to start, and then you'll learn. And so probably to add categories or rearrange versus using a catch-all. So excellent. Okay, thank you so much, Assistant City Manager Enriques. Okay, we will then now move on to our presentation from Fusus by Axon, and I believe Chief McDonald is here along, now I lost my place, Lieutenant Erickson, and then I'll have you introduce the representative from Axon as well. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Council President Wolf and members of council. Jamie McDonald, I'm your police chief. And I'm here tonight I'm going to actually introduce some subject matter experts in this, this opportunity that the city has. The program is called Fusus by Axon, and it is a real-time information gathering program that we have the opportunity to participate with. I know that the joke would kind of go around the police department that I'm not exactly the person that would be at the tip of the spear when it comes to technology. I was the last person to get rid of a flip phone a few years ago. But this opportunity has me excited. And the reason is because it allows us to leverage technology to allow officers to be able to be more efficient with their job, be safer when they're responding to things, and be able to be more effective doing follow-up investigations. So I'm going to introduce a couple of subject matter experts. I think you've all met Lieutenant Lee Erickson in the past, but I'd also like to introduce Andy Grapp. He's an account executive from Axon, which is the company that is providing this service. And so I'm going to get out of the way, and they will be able to talk to you about the technical pieces of it, and I'm here to be able to answer questions as well, should any of those come up.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Council President Wolf and Council. For the record, Lieutenant Lee Erickson with your Tigard Police Department. He called me a subject matter expert, but sure, okay. We'll go with that. Can we put up the other slideshow for this real quick? I guess I'm like the technology guru for the police department, because every time I come before council, it's to consider some new technology that we want to do, or continuing some new technology for us and the community. So without further ado, yes, we're here tonight to talk about Fusus. Next slide, please. Real quickly, we've already done the introductions. We'll go through how this program aligns with the City Council goals. We'll kind of delve into a little bit of what real-time information gathering is and what that means for us. And then Andy from Axon here will give you kind of a meat and potatoes, how the system actually works, what its capabilities are, and what its limitations are. And then it'll come back to me, and I will talk about how we're going to operationalize and actually use this system. And we'll highlight some of the community support we've received, and then we'll open it up for questions. Probably going to be a lot. So next slide, please. So this aligns with City Council goals, several of them, or all 4 of them, but particularly it works with the modernizing and improving city services. So this program is at that leading edge of information gathering and sharing in the public safety realm. It does this all on a single secure platform. So it takes data sources that already exist in the world that we have access to or that we need to request access to and puts it into one interface for us to be able to use it. It's also scalable and flexible to work with our current systems as well as our future systems. So it'll grow and change as the city grows and changes. This is also about the council goal of enhancing community safety and accessibility. This seamlessly integrates all those different data sources into one place. It enhances the situational awareness for our responders, helps us shape our response to be safer and more efficient with our resources. Next slide, please. So Fusus and systems like Fusus, like I said, they integrate all those different data sources. So for us, that means CAD, which is our computer-aided dispatch. So when somebody calls to request police, fire, medical assistance, that goes into computer-aided dispatch. If it's for us, that comes over to us on our computers in our cars, gives us the information. The dispatcher is providing some verbally over the radio. This could be the city-owned and operated cameras. This could be our body-worn cameras, our in-car video systems that we already have out there. And it could also be cameras that the owners have given us permission to, particularly the ones in the business setting. It puts all that data into one place. We're then able to access it, review it, share the information in real time. There's a lag between when somebody who calls for emergency services to when that information actually ends up to getting to the person in the field responding. This kind of cuts a little bit of that lag out of it, and we can get that information faster to the people who need it where they're at. It leverages those assets that are already in place, those cameras everywhere. If the owners are willing to give us permission to use those cameras and stream those cameras, now it's a wider range of sources that we're using. And like I said, unlike traditional information, this is faster. This is in real time as opposed to that 30-second or 20-second lag that we typically experience in calls for service. Next slide, please. And with that, I will turn it over to Andy. If we can bring up the other slideshow again, please.
Thank you, Lieutenant. Council, thanks for having me. Andy Grapp, for the record. I come from the great state of Iowa to join you guys tonight, so happy to be here. Quick background, I have worked in public safety technology for the last decade and have done that all over the United States for various companies, so happy to be here speaking with you tonight. Fusus is really by far the most, I think, revolutionary and exciting thing that I've had the opportunity to present and work in public safety on. If you want to go ahead and move to the next slide, that would be great. I'll draw you to, sorry, one more. Thank you. I'll draw you to the concept and idea that is perhaps your cell phone. You know, we all, maybe with the exception of Chief, have a smartphone. But, you know, most of us are, you know, operating on a device like this. And really what Fusus does is it is the cell phone. Okay, so the police department has all these various cool pieces of technology at their fingertips, already available to them. What Fusus does is it puts them on a single pane of glass and it operationalizes those. So it creates some automation between those things. As Lieutenant was saying, really we're trying to cut down human error and provide situational awareness to officers and to community stakeholders that need this information. If you could go ahead and move forward for the next bullet points. It is a unified Axon ecosystem. I want to be clear about that we are an agnostic platform, but the nice part about being part of the Axon world, and your police department is already engaged with Axon for their body cameras and for their in-car video and evidenciary services as well, we're able to create all of that in a single pane of glass just for those devices, live streaming of body-worn cameras, in-car video systems, and those types of things. You can go ahead and give me the next 2 bullet points if you wouldn't mind. Thank you. So again, like I said, we're a technology agnostic platform. You're going to hear me probably say that a few times. It's something we like to really get out there. What that means is you as a city are not pigeonholed into today this vendor works for the city for CAD or for RMS. We actually, much like the last presentation brought up, we work with Tyler Technologies on a number of fronts and draw things in. But we're agnostic. We truly don't want to dictate to you what vendor you should or should not work with. One of the ways that we do that integration, that last bullet point, is the core video integration. Think of this as a little black box, right? Some are the size of Roku's or Apple TVs. Some are as big as rack-mounted units, and they're designed to ingest video sources. They are penetration tested, they are SOC 2 tested. These are technical terms to talk about the security and privacy behind these devices. All of that is publicly available on our website. You can find all that information around these devices. We're very transparent in that front. What we do is we go out into the community and we ingest video on a voluntary basis. A business owner is the best example, schools are other examples, perhaps hotels, places of worship, those types of things, where they can choose very selectively when and what video they want to share, and then it's automated. Also, they are always in control of that service. They can log in and change those permissions, or simply unplug the box with no disruption to their own security system if they one day disagree with the idea and the concept of sharing. All of that remains within their control, and all of it is heavily audited and protected on the back end. I think it's really important to notice that the concept of connected communities, you're in good company. Over 400 communities around the United States are on board with the Fusus platform and are using it in some capacity. These are cities like Seattle, who voted very much in favor of bringing this on board, NYPD, LA County, all the way down to smaller entities, Campbell, California, Kyle, Texas, several others that I could bring up, and I'm happy to give any introductions there should somebody want to speak to other city councils that have made this decision. Next slide, please. So what this really is, there's so much going on in this slide, but I want to be, again, transparent. The concept in the kind of upper left-hand side where it says agency assets, we take these things and we bring them together. So everything that your department or your police department may or may not have here on the slide, such as, body-worn cameras, drone feeds, taser activation. So we even get notified when into the system when an officer draws their taser, just when they draw it, right? To notice like, hey, or they have the ability to request somebody view them over the body camera, and that information all comes into this central place where it can be monitored in real time. We then go out and we get as many of those community assets as the community is willing to give us, right? We also have a team, by the way. The police department, the community's not on the hook for this on their own. We have a team that will, once we agree upon messaging with the city, we will publish a website where people can go and learn more about it. They can see actively the number of users that are in the system, and they can also they'll also receive phone calls from our team into the business community saying, hey, are you aware of the Connect Atlanta effort or the Connect Tigard effort in this case? And they'll explain that, and those are our people doing that on behalf of the police department, right, and in conjunction with you guys. It then comes down into a bottom layer where really we're talking about two levels. We've got all these cool things connected, and we're either dealing with command and control, which is real-time response. So that is automation. When a CAD call for service comes in, let's say a hit and run or an accident at the corner of X and X, our system goes out and finds the 4 or 5 closest camera feeds, agnostic of who owns them, right? So again, as long as we have permission in that scenario to access them, it will bring up 2 street cameras, one from Starbucks and one from the bank across the street, right, if they all share in. And it will provide the best and accurate situational awareness for that responding officer and for anybody who's providing information in real time to that responding officer, along with several other pieces of information. But that's really the core function of that, is that automation. That allows entities that are large and small to really scale this program and actually puts more officers out on the streets doing their job rather than sitting back and watching and trying to provide, because that automation piece is in place. You would be amazed at the thousands of camera feeds that are monitored by 1 to 2 individuals in some of the largest departments that we've all heard of around the country that are powered by Fusus. The investigation side, that blue section there, that is really aiding after the fact, right? So in real time, we get information, and then after, let's say, a robbery or something has occurred, the police department is able to remotely, with, again, permission, remotely go in and obtain those videos. I'm sure Lieutenant Erickson could speak to this, that many officers spend an inordinate amount of time seeking video, getting it in the right format, getting it in the right codec, and all these things, and it takes up quite a bit of time. That little black box takes care of that problem. And again, with full ownership permission, they're able to ingest that video quickly and actually get, like, say, a suspect or, you know, a missing person, you know, description out instantly over the radio. You've already heard me talk about this, but that bottom section is really where we challenge the status quo of real-time crime centers, if you will. We believe that the real-time crime center is actually the squad car, right? All this is operationalized inside of that MDC on the cell phone, and then can be monitored at larger centers should it need to be. Next slide. This is really, and if you just want to click through, there's a number of words that'll appear here. But basically, this is what it looks like. It's a quick little snapshot of the system as a whole when we bring together body-worn cameras, in-car systems, tasers, drones, CAD and RMS data, and VMS data into one. We are looking at total situational awareness for a incident. And I want to be clear that that doesn't always have to be reactive. It can also be in like preventative in the case of like a large scale event, right? So, you know, I grew up in Adel, Iowa, home of the Sweet Corn Festival. 80,000 people descend on our town and eat a bunch of sweet corn, okay? So in that circumstance, we can build out a game plan, and that can all be here in Fusus, and we can be proactively monitoring, making sure that the visitors to our town are safe. Next slide. Again, you can click through all these till you get to the bottom. Yeah, so essentially, I want to just address a couple of key points, and then I'll be done and pass it back to Lee. It really is all about providing total situational awareness and complete ability to manage all of our systems inside of one hub. We do use intelligent AI, integration and analysis. I want to address AI. It's a big, scary, ever-evolving term right now. To be clear, we are doing artificial intelligence looking at descriptors. So I'm looking for somebody wearing black or with a backpack or with a hat, or I'm looking for somebody wearing yellow or driving a red pickup truck, those types of things. There is never any facial recognition. That is something that we shy away from. It's not something that we put into our system whatsoever. So there's no database that this is reporting back to for those physical descriptors. The other thing we are looking about or talking about when it comes to AI is behavioral AI. So that is the ability to set parameters like, hey, maybe nobody should be behind the high school after 10 p.m. And if they are, we want an alert. So we don't have to put an officer back there to monitor it, but we can get an alert that automatically tells our officer to go there. So it's a force multiplier. Crowd counting. I want to know if a crowd larger than X gathers outside of City Hall or gathers somewhere, those types of things. So that's behavioral AI capabilities. And really, the ability to assess these situations as quickly as possible and respond with precision policing, so we know that we're looking for this individual, this person, and we're not stopping everybody that fits this generalized description. It's really what Fusus is all about, and breaking down those silos. So I think with that, I would turn it back to Lieutenant.
Thank you. Can you talk more about that sweet corn?
Yeah.
I'm hungry now.
Yeah, we back up literally semi-trucks.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, back to the other slideshow, please. Now I can't stop thinking about sweet corn. So while we're bringing it up, I'll just start talking. So to field test the system, we're going to look for businesses that are wanting to partner with us and ask them to give us access to their camera systems. And we have a data sharing license and agreement that you've all seen the draft copy of. So before we would even do that, the business would need to consider that. So they're giving us a little bit more informed agreement for us to use their system. And then they can set all those restrictions in there that they want and the conditions that they want to make themselves feel more comfortable with giving us that access. We would only ask for cameras that are recording in publicly accessible areas. We don't want anything that's private. We don't want things around residences. So if somebody has a surveillance system around their house, we wouldn't want that into our Fusus system. If they want us to know about it, that's fine. They can tell us about it. There's a separate section of this called registration, where that's basically just telling us that, hey, I have a video camera system. If you ever need it, just let me know. Here's my contact information. So case in point, if we have like a neighborhood that has catalytic converter theft in it, and we think maybe something was caught on somebody's Ring camera, if we know that Ring camera is there, we can reach out to that person and say, hey, can you check your camera from this time to this time to see if it captured anything? And if you're willing to share it with us, that'd be great, rather than having to go door to door to door to see where those cameras might already exist. The access to the system is going to be limited to police department personnel with the proper clearance and authorization. We call that criminal justice information system clearance, but that just means that not everybody gets access to it. You have to have an understanding of the sensitivity about privacy and personal information. And then any information that the system collects that we use, that's going to be our data. We own that. And we wouldn't share that with anybody else outside the police department unless it's required or authorized by statute. Next slide, please. So a way to kind of visualize, if I can paint a picture with my mouth words on how we would use this, is like what we had earlier this evening as we were preparing for the discussion tonight. A call came in at a retail store of a theft in progress. A person who was known to the employees at the store was seen probably getting ready to steal. And so as officers are responding to that call that comes in, the person exited the store. Fortunately, somebody outside was able to see this person acting suspiciously and saw that they went around the side of the building to the back where they had parked a truck. So we were able to get there. Without that second person outside the store, we might not have had that information. We would have gone to the front of the store looking for the suspect, and they drive off in the back. With a system like Fusus, if we have that information and there's cameras available to us that we have access to, we can see that occurring in real time. Somebody can share that with the officers responding to the scene, minimize the amount of response time, and hopefully catch somebody in the act before they're able to get away. So that's that real-time piece that makes for better decisions and more efficient use of our resources. And like Andy highlighted, on the back end, if we have a major event, we have a robbery that occurs, and we need to go out and collect video evidence, it's in the system rather than having to go there. When I was a detective, again, I guess technology has just been my thing since day one here. I was the one who had to figure out how to go to a store and, they bought a Costco off-the-shelf surveillance system that was 5 years old and they don't have the manual for anymore. How do I get the video off that? Because now we need that video as evidence. And my solution was to go out and buy an old DVD writer, like a big old VHS sized box, and take that in, plug that into their cameras and record it out there. This allows us to do that digitally. And then any evidence that we collect is still subject to due process. So it still has to go through a court review. It still has to be deemed admissible in trial. So those protections are still in place. Next slide, please. So like any new thing, we're very sensitive to the different ways this could be used. So we've already created a new policy and a new standard operating procedure that you've been provided copies to take a look at to help govern us. The sensitivity to privacy and constitutional rights is paramount in all of our operations, and in particularly here too. This is something new. We want to use it appropriately. We think it could be a game changer for us in terms of our ability to respond to emergencies and calls for service. But we don't want to overstep our bounds, and we don't want to trample on people's rights as we do that. So all of this stuff has that in as a baseline. All of the access to the system, everything we do in it's logged and audited. So if there's any concerns about inappropriate use of the system, we can go back and discover that and address it appropriately within the department. Next slide, please. So we've already received some community support from FUSIS. We've talked with PAC Trust, Macerich, and the Chamber of Commerce. PAC Trust is the property managers for the Oregon Business Park, a very large section of the southeast part of the city, with multiple business clients having office space and warehouse space down there. They're a supporter of us. Think that if we think this is a positive resource for us, then they're all for us pursuing it. Macerich, who owns Washington Square Mall as well as the mall management there, support us doing this, and the Chamber of Commerce issued their strong support for us to secure funding for FUSIS. Next slide, please. Before I go through conclusions, I'd like to address the couple comments that came in during public testimony or public comment earlier this evening. So the first, that the cost of the system would take away from our ability to hire officers or divert funds from hiring officers to using a system like this. And that's not going to be the case. We've historically, when we've run into funding issues, the last thing we do is lose people. People are the most flexible, the most responsive, the most capable for dealing with whatever calls that we have that we need to address. And so we would never look at using the system over hiring people. And then privacy with federal administration and the concerns of the data sharing. We're, in the example of immigration enforcement, we're barred by state law from using any monies to enforce immigration. So even if somebody from the federal government came and asked us to share information in that kind of context, we would say, no, we can't. We're barred by statute from doing so. So hopefully that addresses those two concerns. So in conclusion, this is a real-time information gathering solution. It leverages the data systems that we already have in place and our investment in technology with Axon to create more efficiency and situational awareness when responding to emergencies. We have a strong relationship with our business community, especially because we have the commercial crimes unit that we can leverage to help create more connections and more partnerships to use a system like this. This allows us to make better and safer decisions, deploying our resources at a time when we're limited in both. And we think that we can use this kind of system and still be respectful of people's privacy and constitutional rights without overstepping. So I know in the AIS packet that we submitted tonight that there was some information there that we'd be back on the 28th to discuss the contract if we were told to move forward with this. But in discussions today with Axon, we got some more information, and so there's other opportunities for us to maximize our dollar. So we're considering that, so we will not be back on the 28th with a contract for discussion. We'll be back at a future time to discuss that once we figure out what's the best package, the right size package, and the best opportunity for us. So with that, we're asking council to allow us to move forward with considering and implementing this program and take whatever questions you may have.
Lieutenant Erickson, thank you. Chief, thank you. And Andy, appreciate you being here. I'm originally from Indiana, know a little bit about sweet corn festivals as well. But this is a very serious topic, so I will quickly shift to my fellow counselors and start with questions. And I think we're going to see a lot of nods, so if you all don't mind, I'll start this way, and you can close us up again. Counselor, good to see. So actually, you, Counselor Manini, I'll start with you if you have questions, and then we'll just work this way.
I was a little bit confused. So it's just that the cameras would be like constantly on, like typical security cameras, and then if something happens, you can just tap into it to see what's happening?
Sure.
essentially?
Essentially, so we're not adding new cameras. This is cameras that are already owned in the public eye right now. And so if a call comes in, this links to our computer-aided dispatch system. So the system would show an alert that, hey, this call's occurring here. The officer can click on that link and it will center the map on that location, and then it will pull in the 4 closest cameras that are available for viewing. And if there's none, then there's none. But if there's some, then we can see it.
And would like the owners of the camera know that they were being like tapped into?
That I don't know.
So there's always an audit trail that shows that. There is no real-time notification to those owners at this time. I know it's something that our team is exploring, but that's all I can really say on that subject at the moment. So there's always access, though, to see when they were live streamed, but there's just no real-time notification necessarily.
Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. I do have a couple questions. First, just to add on, you said something about a little black box. So is every participant going to get a little black box?
Yeah, for the most part, yes. So that core, it's a hardware-centric model, so putting that hardware into each location that wants to be what we call a donor site. So they're donating their feeds, right, their cameras. That hardware-centric model allows there to be minimal effect on that business's network. So we're not duplicating streams, getting a little technical. We're not duplicating streams, and we're not constantly peering in over multiple connections to multiple cameras. It's one connection with a heartbeat. The cool part about that core is that all the video that's recorded on there, and there's a retention period of 2 to 4 days, right? That's really all we're talking about. We're not talking about forever in reverse, right? We're talking about 2 to 4 days on average, and that footage that's there legally per the MOU remains that business's until such time that the police department accesses and moves that footage into their evidentiary vault, for which they would need a valid purpose to.
Okay, so the more donor sites we have, that means the more equipment you have to supply. Does that increase our cost over time?
Yeah, sorry, so thank you. Missed out, that was my fault, missed out on one of the key components here. The businesses fund their own participation in the program, is typically how it's deployed. Now, that is up to council and the police department. Some agencies decide to overbuy so they can donate to the community or seed the community. There's some where the businesses fully fund their participation. There's some where it's partial, and there's some where the like chambers of commerce actually fund all of the participants. It's a very inexpensive participation. For example, a business that had like 4 cameras, that they want to share, right? That little black box is going to pay $150 a year for that service, and a $200 one-time fee for that box. So again, very, very inexpensive for any business to be able to join up for that, and they get access to their cameras online as well in their own kind of mini little pieces.
Is there a fee for residents who want to register their cameras?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Just a couple more questions. For the license, I'm curious because you had said, Mr. Grapp, that any participant can cancel at any time. They can just go unplug their box. But the data sharing and license agreement says under termination, this agreement may be terminated by the owner upon 30 days written notice before the end of the term or at any time by the city. So that makes it sound like business owners have to let the police department know that they want to cancel 30 days before they unplug that box.
Yeah, and that's certainly something we can change. This was just a draft that we modified from another agency in Oregon who's currently using the system. But yeah, I can see how that could be confusing. We would want people to feel like they can just unplug, and that would be the end of it. So we can certainly change the draft before we finalize it.
Okay, thank you.
Also, I would add to that, if I may, that's more than likely referring to the payment portion, just to meet certain statutes of.
Oh, the annual?
Yeah, the annual payment can be ceased and prorated back with the 30 days notice.
I see.
But they can unplug that box at any time and stop sharing instantly.
Okay. My last question is, you had on your presentation something about social media updates, and I'm curious, what is that like? Oh, no one got robbed this week, or how do you what is going to happen with that?
Yeah, no, it really depends on how individual communities decide to deploy that side of things. Some people take the data and they build a data shed and live statistics out. Hey, the Arctic helped with these types of things, kind of crime stats in real time. Some people will also ingest like community portal out. They'll say like, hey, if you have suggestions, or hey, this, and that can come in to our system that way over social media. So there's a couple of ways that might be referencing in there.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thanks, Councilor. Councilor Hu.
Thank you, Council President Wolf, and thank you so much for your presentation. So your presentation did help me understand a lot about the process. So, but let me just help me walk through the process a little bit more about, say I'm a store owner who's interested in this technology. Again, the data sharing and license agreements sort of imply there will be police officers going to the site to actually evaluate whether the camera, the locations are appropriate, and we will, the police will only allow or sign up for the program, allow the business owner to sign up for the program if it's appropriate for their purpose. So I'm curious, if we did go forward this, which officer, how many officers will we be assigned for this evaluation process? And the contract said take about an hour. So during that hour, will the Axon representative be there to install the box? So I'm just wondering how much resources, internal personnel require to actually inspect a business for this program, and how many business do you expect, per week that could be can sign up for this and actually get inspected? And so, can we start with that?
Sure. Yeah. So the inspections don't have to take very long.
Okay.
I don't know how long it takes to set up the system once we've said, yeah, this is an appropriate use for us. But for us to go there on site, we're just going to look at where the cameras exist,
okay,
where they're currently recording, which ones, talk to the owner, like which ones are you interested in sharing with us? How does that look? And then we'll be able to know, like, okay, based upon that, you would need this size of a core from FUSIS to make that work for what you're agreeing to. So it won't take very long, and largely I envision us using our commercial crimes unit folks to help us out with that. We also have administrative support folks who can help us out with that, or I can go out and do it too. I have a few free minutes here and there, but and I'm the technology guy. So it won't take very long at all to do those inspections. Our concern is like, I don't want a camera that's like in a private area, like
right,
in a restroom. I don't want that. So don't show me that one. Show me the ones that are on your sales floor or covering your parking lot. Those are the ones that I'm concerned about.
Right. Yeah, I really appreciate you mentioning you worry about privacy many times, even in all the documents. My concern is that, we do want to protect people's expectation of privacy. But if you ask any of us on the dais what that means, I will not be surprised if we come up with very different definition. So my main concern is that that expectation of privacy is not defined in any of the document I'm seeing.
Sure.
So I appreciate your commitment for that, but I'm just really worried about there's no guardrail here for what reasonable expectation of privacy is.
Okay.
And I do believe that this is something that we need community buy-in, because next year we're going to ask for their buy-in for a very big commitment for a new police facility. And I do not want we take the wrong step here and this becoming a distraction for community support.
Sure.
So that's my main concern. And also in terms of business expectation, Councilor Robin pointed out a few license agreement questions. And I'm being a lawyer, so I have a lot more questions. So in section 5, it says city will not share access to owners' camera view with member of the public or outside the city without the prior written consent of the owner. But during presentation, you add a caveat of unless required by statute. So I'm surprised that is not in the agreement. And I'm just wondering if a business owner signing this, they actually understand what they're getting into, like the 30 days termination, and the policy and SOP are not even mentioned in the license agreement. And so I appreciate the black box description. So my understanding now is that if a business owner attach the black box to their video feed, the video actually stored on that locally on that black box.
Yes, sir.
And so if the city start live streaming from that video camera, would anything be stored on the city side right away as soon as we started live streaming, or?
Yeah, sorry, I wanted to make sure I let you finish. Yes, but not on the city's platform, within the Fusus platform that has an appropriate amount of allocated storage.
Okay.
And then eventually, the beautiful part of the Axon side of things is they gather everything relevant in the Fusus platform, and then with one click, it's pushed over to evidence.com, which is an Axon product that the city already uses to manage their evidence.
So I have a question about whether the video on the black box is considered public record information, or whether the video information streamed to your server is considered public information. Because, as you know, public information is subject to public requests requirements, right? So, again, right now, let's say if we don't have live stream tap into the camera, if we, say I'm a Joe Public, I said, hey, I'm just using Fred Meyer example. I don't know if they're going to use it. Hey, Fred Meyer, I want your video recording from this day to this day, and they can just tell me to eat dirt, right? But as soon as it become a public, public information or public data, that's subject to different requirements. All of a sudden, Fred Meyer lose control over the video stream. So I wonder if the business owners actually understand that they actually lost a lot of control. And just like youth councilor said, they will not know when the live stream is the police is starting to look at the live stream, right? So that's my main concern. So I think, again, that's something that we need to address. If right now, I'm just going to put out there are so many questions I'm not going to support moving forward, but maybe we can address that. Does the city council have questions? Please go ahead. I have a lot more, so please go ahead.
Yes, and then I also, I think we picked up some time at the beginning, so if this takes a little bit more, I want to have a sense of direction on how we move forward. So I appreciate all the questions and the thoughtfulness. So I will continue on. Councilor Shaw.
Thank you very much. Really appreciate the presentation, and I also like technology because it can be very efficient. The question I have is on slide 6, the last bullet says any information collected by the system would not be shared except as authorized by statute. I'd love to get what that authorized by statute list is. Like, is it what the different statutes are that we would authorize, and that information would then become available. Doesn't need to be now, because I know you'll be coming back, but I would like to, maybe between now and when you'd be bringing back the contract, I would like to see that. Thank you.
Okay, Councilor Shaw.
Sorry.
I know what you meant, Council President Wolf. Thank you.
Councilor Schlack.
Thank you. Councilor Schlack has the call. Thank you. Appreciate you both coming in and answering our many questions. I think, the idea of surveillance is a really sensitive topic, and it's something we definitely want to get the balance right on. I have some technical questions and then just sort of an out loud musing, if I may, on it. The first question I have, just to clarify, this is sounds like a totally an opt-in program. So business owners who may have surveillance systems already in place, like just the usual sort of, mall or grocery store cameras that we're all very used to at this point, they would be opting in. So it may very well be that businesses that have those systems don't opt into this system. Is that accurate?
That's correct, yes.
Thank you. And then I'd love to hear a little bit about how long data is stored in the system. Just thinking about some of these privacy concerns, is there like an automatic deletion point where we'll keep it in the system for 30 days or something like that, and then afterwards the system is purged, so that way we don't just have recordings of people persisting forever in our system unless it's related to a specific crime or ongoing case?
Sure, yeah. So as Andy said, the black box keeps it for what, 2 to 3 days?
Perfect.
It greatly depends on the configuration of that black box. It's designed as a general guideline of 4 days, but can be expanded as you add more storage. Essentially, however many cameras, again, to get technical with you, however many cameras, there's a finite amount of storage on that device, and it will overwrite itself as new recordings come on. So in that sense, it's always purging itself, but that information remains on that black box and is not subject to any type of the FOIA request or anything like that until such time that they, as the police department, move it to the Fusus platform.
Okay.
And when we move it over to our side of it, it's because it's related to a criminal case or an ongoing investigation. And so then it's subject to the court rules and statute and our policies that talk about data retention.
All right, thank you. So just sort of to recap, there are limits to it just because of hardware. There's a finite amount of hardware space, and data will get overwritten if it's not already been moved to the system. So there is, it's not a policy per se, but there's just a natural sort of length of time that something can be handled. Just to
I would add slightly to it that once it is moved into the Fusus system, I think the best way to think about it is it's going to be managed just like a body-worn camera piece of footage would, or any other evidentiary piece of footage today, per the Tigard Police Department policies.
Thank you. I'd love to hear a little bit about your cybersecurity practices, which I feel like is an odd thing to ask about in a public meeting, to be fair. Just thinking that we're going to have, data out there, concerns about privacy. Obviously, I feel like a secondary aspect is not just making sure that it's used correctly internally, but that external actors could not get at it either. So I don't know how much you can really speak to that, but I'd love to hear just a little bit about that topic.
Yeah, I'm certainly not the cybersecurity expert, but we do get the question enough that I can provide you with an answer and ongoing resources. So I'll start actually with a resource. www.trust.fusus.com is our portal where you can see all of our publicly available penetration testing, our SOC 2 compliance, our ISO certificates, and all of those things related to cybersecurity and best practices. And actually with an NDA that you can sign right there, you can actually view even more, right, in depth into our platform. So that is available and publicly facing, can say that. What I would say is for me, and my field within Fusus is very much the small and medium-sized agencies. So a lot of times small and medium-sized agencies don't have the resources, and so we have to lean on maybe some of the work done by larger agencies. And so I would maybe point you to agencies such as NYPD, LA County, Seattle, here in the state, Bend, right, who have all vetted this extensively, in some cases over years, to ensure not only that it is up to par on a cybersecurity front, but also up to par on a civil liberties and protection of those rights front.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Question for Lieutenant Erickson, probably on this. I know we've been talking a lot about use cases on business property, at the mall or downtown. And this is just a lack of knowledge on my end. We have public areas owned by the city, Universal Plaza, and so on. I'm not aware of, just offhand, if we have cameras there, and if so, they would be, I would imagine, integrated with this system. Could you provide some clarity there if possible?
Sure, yeah. So there are cameras that the city owns in publicly accessible areas already. City
Okay.
parks downtown, around the City Hall campus, within the police department building, that already exists. And yes, those would be part of the initial infusion of data and streams that we would have available to us.
Cool. So the way I would imagine the rollout then is we have city surveillance on city property. That would be sort of a baseline part of the rollout, and then from there would be opt-ins from businesses, maybe residents, which would expand coverage. It wouldn't be 100%, but it would just be sort of growing in that respect, or maybe it goes back if people opt out. That would be more or less how this looks. Correct?
Yeah, and that's how we envision it too.
Thank you. And then my out loud musing that I promised. I'm not a constitutional law expert or Supreme Court justice, but I feel like this gets into a really interesting area of privacy expectations, as Councilor Hu was mentioning, but also property rights. Because I feel like, if I'm going to a grocery store, which would be opted in, I'm just going to keep going with the grocery store example, it is business property. I don't want to say personal property, but there are certain property rights there the property owner or the leasee has there, and where do their rights to manage that property as they see fit? Where is that boundary between that and reasonable privacy expectations I may have when going to the grocery store? And I don't have an answer for that. That's just sort of my out loud musing of like where I feel this tension comes in, because I feel like based on the public support, the letters that we have, businesses have a right to protect their business property and make sure that there isn't theft or crime happening there, but also there is a reasonable expectation for me as a patron of that business to not just be surveilled for the heck of it. I don't have an answer for that. I feel like that we could get some really good jurists to debate that right now. But that's kind of where my head is at as far as getting the balance right. So thank you for entertaining my out loud musing, everyone.
Of course.
Thank you, Councilor Slack, and we will continue on. Councilor Gadusi.
Wonderful. Thank you for the presentation. Full disclosure, I'm a consultant for an AI scribing company, and I regularly give grand rounds lectures on bias and artificial intelligence in medical schools. So that's the fun way to wrap this all up. One of my first questions, in looking at similar communities that have used this, I've had issues finding discrete data points in terms of overall improved outcomes. I've seen that immediately after implementing it, those that increased cameras did see some improvement. My thought process is that's more correlation, more of a deterrent rather than Fusus itself. Can you point me towards any actual data of reduced crime or improvement other than case reports in your own studies?
Yeah, so you are outlining, I think, a problem that we acknowledge that it's a very new market, and part of the issue is that people are deploying real-time crime centers, quote unquote, very differently all across. We have some people that man them, some people that don't. They're 24/7. They're only during busy shifts. They're never monitored. A lot of my agencies in Illinois they've completely, they don't run any type of center. It's all to the officers in the field. And so there are varying points and agencies that have self-subscribed to, we're going to start tracking these things. We're going to start tracking the effectiveness. So there's not widely published data available yet. The National Real-Time Crime Center Association just kicked off its second year of existence, right, to give you an idea. So we are seeking some of these things. What I can point you to is there are some agencies, and some of it is anecdotal, right? I mean, it just is. But I believe it's an East Coast agency. I believe it's Charlotte that had 15 missing persons found because of the Fusus Real-Time Crime Center, 220 stops that resulted in a felony arrest, right, that were powered by the Real-Time Crime Center. So there's some data out there, but a lot of it really depends on the individual agency to track it. So again, I'd love to give you some really cool statistics that prove this out, but it's really about visiting and talking with similar-sized agencies and seeing what their years 1 and 2, and sometimes 3 or 4 in some of our really established markets, what their outcome has been. What is tangible on some level is the participation by the business community seems to be, by and large, 4 years in seems to be where it like matures and levels off. Like there's early adopters, the law of infusion of innovation and all that. So like Atlanta is a 4-year-old market for us, and they've got 25,000 business feeds coming into their real-time crime center. So the city did a study, because those were existing cameras that they did not have any access to prior. It would have cost them something like $27 million to go out and install that many cameras. And so the business community is paying far, far, far less than that to participate in their own community's public safety. And that kind of good deal for both public safety efforts and the business community seems to be very repeatable over and over again, no matter how it's deployed. Hopefully that's a long-winded answer to your question. That's a non-answer, I realize.
Thank you. And going a little deeper into what Councilor Schlack had brought up with the cybersecurity, I dig a little bit into what you use in some of the SOC 2 and ISO securities. And digging into like the Django REST APIs, et cetera, it seems that the fact that you're tech agnostic is a significant vulnerability of your system. So the constant APIs that are being used actually end up opening up a window. And trying to find what your company is going to be doing in the future to help that, there doesn't seem to be a great plan. And in looking at your current hiring practices, it looks like you're mostly concerned with contract management, finance, and legal versus cybersecurity itself. What's the company doing right now to help improve that and close down those holes?
I'm going to defer to that's probably far outside of my purview to really answer that question with any great concern, other than saying Axon is the global leader in evidence security. So I have full faith in my decade of experience that if anybody is managing it right, it is them.
Thank you.
Yep.
A little bit about the AI itself. I know that you had mentioned it's just using descriptors and it doesn't use facial recognition. Is it because it can't use facial recognition or because we choose not to?
It has not been designed to do so.
And what does it use for training specifically, if you happen to know? Because one of my concerns is if it's using, the open source data sets, that in itself ends up being biased, and in doing so it educates that and proliferates that sort of biases.
Yeah, again, I'd be happy to provide a resource for you to answer that. I'm not an AI engineer, so I don't want to get in trouble with my answer there.
Fair enough. I guess this other one ends up being a little technical. Never mind. Going towards the legal aspect, though, and of course I'm not a lawyer, but Councilor Hu did mention some of the privacy concerns. So in looking at the publicly accessible areas and that expectation of privacy, the way that I look at large data systems like this is the same way that I do in medicine. So if I have personal health information, if I have a 40-year-old male, that's general enough that it doesn't matter. If I have a 40-year-old male in Tigard, that brings it down a little bit more. A 40-year-old in Tigard that lives in this neighborhood ends up narrowing it down. The problem with AI in general and gathering all this data is with each camera, yes, you may have that expectation of privacy, but once you compile it all together, it's no longer reasonable. And that's one of the big concerns that a lot of other cities have been having with this sort of not just facial recognition, but using descriptors. So even though that descriptor can be generalized, once you get all that data across a lot of different time points and locations, that becomes a bigger privacy concern. So that's one of my main concerns as well.
Sorry, was there a question?
There was not. That was a comment. Okay. Sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Gaddusi. It's been a rich conversation. And I know you do. I assure you, Councilor, who I'm not going to, but I'm just going to take a second because I will be very brief because of all my colleagues' questions. It struck me, Andy, you were talking about your 4-year period. Have you had cities leave the system and say that it wasn't, and what was that feedback that you got from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think every especially new and evolving pieces of technology has detractors, right? So we have had agencies leave, from what I have been told, because they were not in my purview. It was mostly due to just they thought it was going to be very white glove, and it required a little bit more work on the part of the agency than probably was anticipated. That's the general consensus that I could provide you with context on.
So more of an internal operations kind of challenge with it as opposed to
I would view
community challenges.
Yeah, sorry, I did not mean to interrupt you. I
Oh,
would
no,
view
it's
it
okay.
more as a failure on the behalf of Axon and Fusus to properly educate that agency on what training, rollout, deployment, community engagement, ongoing resources looks like, right? Which informs how we all present, I think, and how we all talk about it today. We have this Connect team, they're great, they go out into the community, they work with you. We have a legal team that works to put together a very specific MOU that satisfies, Tigard's desire and the state statutes and everything. We have all those great people, but at the end of the day, it takes it takes a technology guru who's really excited about this to go out and pump it up to his community. Those are the platforms where you get, I get phone calls now from some of my agencies who are like, we just caught somebody who stole something from Kohl's, right? And like, we never would have caught that person, but we caught it because, Fusus was involved, and we're able to, really affect immediate change. And so those are the fun things that we get to do. But I think that early on learnings about what was white glove versus what requires a little more effort, that's why some of our early customers churn, but it's very small.
Okay, thank you. And truly, a lot of my questions were answered, and certainly have concerns about AI and how it is misused in that access and the risks of that. But with that, I will return to Counselor, who, assuming the two of you, do you have follow-up questions, or go ahead?
This is just another clarification about it. So if there were to be a robbery in Tigard Public Library for some reason, could you get to a camera that's all the way in Bull Mountain, even though it's pretty distant?
Yeah, if the camera's there and it's been accessible to us, yes, we could. But we wouldn't. I mean, functionally speaking, we would go to the system would first bring up the closest cameras that are available. But unless we had information that says the suspect may be over on Bull Mountain, we wouldn't access that because it's not helpful to what we're trying to do. And being resource strapped like we are, we're going to focus our efforts where they're going to have the best opportunity to be successful.
Of course, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Counselor Robin?
Thank you. I did think of one more. Have there been any lawsuits directed against cities who are using this?
Not to my knowledge.
Thank you. So I appreciate Councilor Gudushi bringing up results. I appreciate there must be some story about how the system helped catch a, thief or whatever. But overall, you didn't acknowledge that you couldn't find any data to support that the city get benefits from the system. So that's a main concern because, I appreciate Lieutenant Erickson mentioning that we are not going to spend money on something at the expense of not hiring officers, and I really appreciate that. I do appreciate officers, and I think we need them. But at the end of the day, it is $100,000, and even if we're not going to cut officer, I wonder, if we could, we have a citizen here just came to before us, complaining about traffic safety. I was wondering if we can pay overtime instead of this $100,000. We can go overtime for more traffic enforcement. And in general, I feel safe in Tigard thanks to our police officers and other first responders. If I have to name something that I don't feel safe about, it is traffic safety. So I wonder if we could direct our money for more robust traffic enforcement instead of this. If we can find benefit from other data, from other cities' experience. Also, I assume this policy 701 is intended to cover the system. But again, as a lawyer, I read I read this and I found several inconsistencies. It says cameras may be placed in public areas within the city. But again, I use Fred Meyer as an example. I don't think Fred Meyer parking lot is considered public areas, right? Because I can protest at the sidewalks of Fred Meyer, but I cannot just protest at the parking lot. So I don't think. Anyway, I think the policy again need to be updated for those things. Like, it says the camera system is the City of Tigers property, but as you mentioned, the black box is owned by the businesses, so we need to update this. And another thing is, again, I mentioned that the license agreement wouldn't have to reference the policy, and the policy and the agreement just simply say that the camera system is for public safety purposes. But the policy went in a lot deeper, right? It says for investigation purposes related to criminal investigation, administrative investigation, significant events, and emergency call for services. I appreciate you mentioning that the state of Oregon is a sanctuary state, that local police enforcement officers are prohibited to help enforcement with immigration. But there are other circumstances. One I can think of is there are several states that it is a crime for a person to cross interstate line to seek abortion in another state. And who knows, we may have a federal law coming soon with similar criminal penalty. So this system is a very powerful and very tempting system for federal government. What happened? It's a rhetorical question. You don't have to answer. What happens if we are asked to help enforce this abortion ban, that a person cannot cross state line to seek abortion in Oregon, or anybody who helped that person to get abortion in Oregon? If the federal government want our assistance using this powerful technology, what are we going to say to them? And that makes me really concerned. And going back to Councilor Shack, the point of what is reasonable expectation of privacy, I don't know. That's why we need to take time to figure that out, right? It's like going back to my example of seeking reproductive health care in Oregon. Would a doctor or a PA or a nurse or a pharmacist feel safe to be seen with a woman seeking abortion access in Oregon? Are they going to have a coffee at Symposium? Who knows how many cameras are on Symposium? Are they going to be investigated for helping this woman to obtain abortion access in Oregon? I do not know. So there are many concerns that I have. Again, I just would, I have no problem with the agency asset part going into the system, but I have grave concern about the community asset being integrated to the system. So I think that's all I have right now. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor. Councilors to Councilor Shaw, you do not?
No.
Okay, we're just going to go right back down to the two of you.
So I just sort of want to tease out that example, because I think that does raise a good point about, let's think about, I don't want to necessarily choose another state that's not contiguous, but I'm just trying to think, let's suppose, a neighboring municipality, a crime occurs there, they would want to see surveillance footage at the local grocery store. For whatever reason, they think it's relevant to the case they're putting together. They would, I'm just trying to think about even how that would work in any way that's different from any surveillance systems that would currently be in place. Like if we weren't going to comply with other jurisdictions trying to seek this information, maybe I'm just not close enough to how the legal system would work. I feel like there'd have to be some sort of subpoena in place in order to get it, or like the police department would have to actively just not comply with it, which I don't know. It's an interesting additional perspective that would need to be navigated, that I wanted to openly muse about. I don't know if there's a particular answer with with how that would work that would be any different from how current surveillance systems that are in place would already work.
I guess the easiest answer for that is we're sworn and empowered to enforce state laws. So if another agency is investigating a violation of state law and they request our assistance, we can provide that assistance using whatever tools are available to us, because we're both doing the same job. We're both enforcing state law violations. Beyond that, I don't have any authority or power or am sworn to do the rest. So if somebody's investigating a theft that's a violation of state law, and for whatever reason there's evidence that might exist in our systems, we could assist with that.
And just to go off of the example, we used Oregon state law specifically, not other state laws.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think, if I may, from a system capability standpoint, one perspective that we have often found helpful in this regard is if you were having coffee at that place and there was some type of investigation that needed to occur, the police department would walk in and ask for that footage. And if they had the subpoenas and the right, they would get it. All this system does is accelerate the rate so they can act on information quicker. That's really all it's doing, because we're not putting up more additional cameras. The system is getting access to assets that already exist and accelerating the rate at which we can get to those systems.
But it does have the capability of surveillance, lifetime surveillance. So that's my problem. I have no problem with legal subpoena of a record from a coffee shop. I mean, that's totally legal. But right now, I don't know what the federal government is capable of doing. So, I won't say any more. I will just keep it there. But I have many concerns. So.
Thank you, Councilor Hu. I just want to confirm, Councilor Gaddusi, do you have any follow-ups? Okay, Councilor Shaw.
Thank you, and I appreciate the focus on the national attention. You mentioned Bend was also a client and has administered this. Do you know approximately how long they've had this system in place?
A year and a half, roughly.
Yeah. So their system they're a city very similar to us, I would think, in a lot of ways. I'm wondering from a values perspective, and I think even they're larger than we are, but a lot of small town feel is similar. So I'm wondering if there isn't some data we could collect from the city of Bend that they can share to counselor who his perspective to see if they have any concerns, because they too have a distrust of the national kind of statutes and government. So if we could get some data sharing with the city of Bend, I think that would be helpful.
Yep, that's easy enough. I've spoken with the folks at Bend who are running their program there, and ours is largely modeled off of what they've put in place over the last year and a half. No reason to reinvent the wheel when somebody else already invented it for me. So, but yes, I can reach out to them and get some more of that information.
That'd be great, because I think they'd have the same skepticism and some of the same concerns from statutes, and in particular with immigration and some protection of women's rights. So that would be very helpful. Thank you. Thank you, Council President.
Yes, and the one thing I'd like to add to that is I also, assuming this conversation was going to be part of our dialogue tonight, City of Portland is coming on board, correct? So I think that also in terms of their due diligence, their process, because I can't imagine that some of these concerns weren't part of that conversation as well. But I'll stop with that, and I'm going to go to Councilor Gaddusi, and then I think we're going to call the questions closed and look to the Chief and City Attorney Rahala and City Manager Reimer what our next steps are. There is no action tonight. This was discussion only.
And this is only to answer Councilor Shaw's question, because I did look up some of the stats with Bend specifically. So although there was an increase from the previous years, I just was able to find calls to service and case reports. But then in looking at that proportion to population, it was only a slight negligible increase. So no significant change overall. So although you saw absolute increase in those cases, proportionally with the population.
But I also think part of this was the expediency of getting to those cases, right? Not necessarily growth or shrinking. Okay. Okay, well, we will give, I mean, this is really important, so I'm not trying to make light of it, but okay, Councilor Hu, bring it home, and then we're going to look at what our next steps are.
Yeah, in the document, it was mentioned that this system will help with cities' cities' goal of combating, tackling houselessness. How would this help with our houselessness situation?
Sure. The vision there is if we have that information available to us, we know where folks experiencing houselessness may be, then we're able to get them connected to resources faster, rather than trying to figure out where they might be or whatever. If that information is available to us immediately, then we can tie them into service providers a lot faster.
Would that lead to eventually not needing the services like from people like Officer Worth? Are we expecting not having real-time patrol of downtown anymore and having this substituting that?
No, but it's going to make his abilities expanded. He'll be able to make more contact with more folks that need that help. So it wouldn't eliminate his or even reduce the amount of work that he does. It would still be in that realm. I don't know if he's missing folks right now, but this would help us understand that if he is not able to connect with folks because he can't locate them.
Okay. I think another expectation is staffing level. So that's another discussion you may have to have with your officers. So.
Sure.
So again, thank you all. A really important, very rich conversation. But I will look to you all on, I'm sure you have more than a lot than you need. But this was a discussion. Just wanted to let you have the opportunity to wrap up this evening's conversation.
Well, thanks, Council President. I know the city attorney has a few things to share. We'll start there. And also Chief McDonald may have some follow-up.
Thank you. So, Council, there's 2 points that I want to address that came up in the conversation. One of them is the ownership of the records. So it's my understanding that the city does not own the records until we bring them over to our system. So we have no public records obligations or record retention obligations until they are actually archived as evidence. So they are not, for legal purposes, we are not the custodian of the record. So just to clarify that. The other part is the musings on the expectation of privacy. When you're in a public space, there is none. So keep that in mind when you're at the grocery store or wherever you are. That as long as it is in a public space, public meaning open to the public, not meaning publicly owned. So when you're in a public space, by law, you have no expectation of privacy. Any photos taken of you, videos, all of that is usable without your permission by law. So just to clarify those 2 points.
Councilor Hu, to answer your question, so specifically, first I'll start with like the example of Officer Orth and Officer Tillotson. So their roles morphed rather drastically into doing work with our homeless community. That isn't the vision for those positions. They're community-oriented policing officers. It's a much broader view of what we would like them to be able to do. It's just that the most immediate concern right now in the community is what they're currently doing. There's a lot of other things they could be doing, investigating crimes, helping businesses downtown maybe solve some of the other issues that they currently see, and then more importantly, across the entire city. It's just that the problem is so acute currently that that's what they spend the vast majority of their time working on. So if we were able to be able to address those concerns, get people connected to services, get people housing, they have a laundry list of things they could be doing currently. So a system like this isn't going to impact negatively the officers that we currently have. In fact, what we hope this does is it enhances their ability to be able to be effective in their work, right? By being able to give them additional tools so that they can leverage technology that already exists, the feeds, the camera feeds that are already there, to be able to be more effective in their work, allows them to be able to do a better job. For example, we've talked a couple times about traffic enforcement. If we can have an officer that could save 15, 30 minutes a day just because of being able to leverage technology, that allows them to be able to go and sit at a stop sign that we've had a lot of complaints on, or a street that has speeding. every time we add up 30 minutes a day, that becomes real time that officers can devote to other tasks that we currently don't have the time to devote to. A system like this may allow us to actually be able to do investigations we can't currently get to because an officer is spending time going to collect video from the very same store that is already willing through this program to give us the access to those feeds. Washington Square Mall and the ownership of that mall is very excited to get on board with this program. Their director of security, who is one of the co-signers on the letter that we provided to council, has experience with this in other centers that they have across the country, and he said that they love being able to partner with law enforcement to be able to provide access to those. We currently have access to their cameras. We just have to do a complicated login process to get the access to them. This would take away a complicated login process and give officers the ability to do that. It gives us a better, more efficient ability to do something we already have access to. So that's what we're looking for with the use of a system like this. I understand the privacy concerns. The reality is almost anywhere we go, we're already being on some sort of video surveillance. The question is how does that get used? And we do have those guardrails. You put it into the policy. The system is very strong in marking anyone who accesses it. Just like any of the Axon products, the body camera that I'm wearing right now, if it were recording and somebody were to go in and look at this recording later, it tells me who it was, date and time that they viewed that video, every single time it gets viewed. The system is exactly the same way. Somebody doesn't get to just have access to the system just because they want to do it. They have to have a legitimate reason, and they would be held accountable if they weren't, or if they were using it outside of what the policy says. So we try to put those guardrails on it to make sure that we have the right direction that we're heading. Last week, I had the opportunity to talk with Chief Krantz. He's the chief at the Bend Police Department, and I was talking to him specifically about this program. And he said that what they're finding, and they have a couple of things that they're using that we aren't proposing to start with. He said what they're finding is it allows the officers to have a much more efficient response to the calls. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean that the call volume is going up, but they're responding to more calls, but they're being able to respond more efficiently. They're getting better information before they respond to a call. So in many cases, they're able to respond faster because of information that they're getting prior to going to the call. So it isn't necessarily about whether or not there's increased data for more calls or more crimes being solved. It's allowing a more efficient response. And one of the things that we would hope to get out of it is that it allows more time for officers to do that additional task, or maybe to investigate crimes that we currently aren't able to investigate because we just don't have the capacity to do it. So trying to come up with ways to leverage technology that exists is what we're trying to do with moving forward with a system like this. So that's the whole idea of bringing this before you and bringing it to this community, is to give consideration to what that might look like for Tigard. And in terms of funding for it, the proposal that I would use is that we have funds that we get through asset forfeiture, and that's how I would propose us to do it, to try it for the year, to see what it looks like. And every contract the city does, there's an opt-out clause. If we don't have the funding to pay for it next year, we don't have the funding. But it's an allowable use for the asset forfeiture funds, and it would allow us that opportunity. We can't hire an officer with asset forfeiture funds. Could we use it to pay some overtime? Yes, with certain parameters, yes, we can. But that's what I would recommend if we were to move forward. That's how we would fund it to start, to see if it's something that makes an impact in Tigard and see if it's something that's good for this community.
Thank you, Chief, and thank you, City Attorney Rihala. I guess I need to clarify what I mean by reasonable expectation of privacy. I'm not talking about in legal sense. I'm talking about what the community expect. Because I was talking to one of my neighbor who's she's more of a on a conservative politically than I am, and she trusts police 100%. But when I give her brief description of this program, she did not like it. I remember her comments, when I went to Fred Meyer, I do not want the police to see me dropping a jar of mayonnaise. So I think my request is mostly not a legal definition or seek legal clarification, but more of a community input, a community buy-in. I know that our Public Safety Advisory Board made a recommendation to have a police body camera, and that's what we have now. And that's a decision that's made collectively from a diverse group of a community. At this point, we can see that we have business support, but do we have support from minority members or immigrant community or religious community? Again, this have the ability to have artificial AI for behavioral. So what happened if somebody went to the METS, the Muslim Education Trust Center? What happened if they go worship at a different time? Are they going to be subject to more enhanced scrutiny? So those are questions that I really want the community member, a greater community member as a whole, is do we really want this system? Rather than, what's the legal definition of reasonable expectation of privacy? So that's all the point I have on that one. And in terms of efficiency, I appreciate that. I'm a big technology buff myself. I have a new phone every year. But again, it's those things that, the data, right? We can allow officers to more efficient law enforcement, which is great, but does that translate to more robust traffic enforcement? I don't know. So I need more data on that as well from the band community or any other community that have done this. So I just need more data. So that's all I have. Thank you.
City Manager Reimer, did you have any? Because clearly, as we said, this was not an action, this was a discussion. There has been requests for additional information and data, so I just thought I'd look to you to wrap up next steps, and I think maybe the extra time as those conversations around the contract are occurring provides some extra opportunity to bring back some of the information the council has requested. But,
thanks, Council President. You said everything I was about to say. Really, I think it was setting the expectation for what the next steps are, and I think you just articulated. The team obviously will continue to have the conversation, seek out the data and information all of you are seeking, have further conversations, obviously, with Axon, as well as other agencies and communities, and come back as appropriate. I guess we have to determine the right amount of time for that. Come back. I would expect this is not bringing the contract back that time, so it'd be an additional conversation first, and then look if we have satisfied the questions you have, or if other questions come up at that time. So that's what I would suggest, and if everyone's on the same page with that, that's how we will
that's
pursue.
General nod, next steps.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You all very much.
Thank you.
Last item on our agenda is briefing on pavement management program. And I have on my agenda Project Manager George and Principal Engineer Furman, but I think Project Manager George. Hello, Nicole, thank you, welcome.
This is going to be very boring after all of that. So, yay, maintenance.
We're excited about pavement.
Oh, good. Do we have our slideshow? So I have some videos embedded in my slideshow that I hope work. So that's my biggest concern tonight. I'm Nicole George. I work for the engineering department and specifically do the pavement maintenance program. And just wanted to bring to council kind of an overview of the program, what we've been doing, and hopefully, and this is all kind of tied in, we'll be back at the end of the month talking about street maintenance fee, which is our funding source for this. So just waiting.
Eric, are you able to bring up the slide and I assume advance it to the second slide? Would that be right, Nicole?
Yeah, that'd be great.
I don't have slides for this.
Awesome.
All right, well, we will continue with a verbal report. And if you want to act out your videos, I guess.
Okay. Okay. Like I said, pavement maintenance fee or pavement maintenance program is funded by our street maintenance fee, and it's utilized through our utility billing system. So every resident and business pays into that fund, and we utilize it to maintain our streets. We have numerous different types of maintenance that we do within the city, and depending on the roadway and the conditions, we have a general 5-year plan that we kind of map out, and that's utilizing a system from our, it's called Street Saver is the program, that database that holds all of our pavement condition indexes. And so we developed this 5-year plan, and depending on the funding for that year and all sorts of other factors, we come up with a plan usually around this time of year, and start implementing that. And the construction season is usually in the summer. What's unique about Tigard and is kind of fun for our maintenance side is we actually added the transportation demand score on the back end of that analysis to make sure we were addressing sections of the city that were in more need than others. Usually with pavement maintenance, you just kind of address, unfortunately, you get more bang for your buck addressing good streets and keeping them good. Adding that transportation demand score just let me kind of focus in on different areas of the city that we may have been neglecting for any reason. Pavement condition index, it's a scale of 0 to 100, and 0 being terrible and 1 being freshly paved. And right now our city is roughly at a PCI of 80, and that's kind of been a general goal, although I don't think it's been determined as such. It's just kind of a general rule that we're trying to maintain that. It's calculated by an asphalt degradation curve, and so the software Street Saver actually implies that. So say you have a brand new street, it starts out of 100, and it implements that curve, and so it lets you know where that roadway should be, and then we update those PCIs through a windshield survey every other year. I have beautiful photos. Yeah, this is a picture of our curve. And there were some pictures of what those types of windshield surveys look to, cracking, potholes, things like that. A PCI of 80 is generally in the good range on the scale, and anything 70 or below is really where you start to not being able to do that surface maintenance, but you have to actually do a grind or a dig out and start doing more. Types of pavement we do right now, or types of treatments, we do crack seal followed by slurry seal. That's kind of our largest part of the program, and that is roughly 20 miles of pavement every year, and it's for our residential streets. And then we also have an amazing streets crew who goes out prior to that, and say we have a pothole or we have some alligator cracking, they can go out and they can dig that section out. And so the slurry really does that top layer, but they're addressing lower than that as well. We started doing a chip seal program this last summer, and we started doing that on more of our commercial roadways. It's not the preferred type for residential because it's so rough, but it's great for commercial because we have that traffic that kind of embeds the chips in that. We also do full depth repair all the way down to the gravel, and then we also do a grind and inlay, which is the top 2 to 4 inches of the pavement. For crack sealing, This really only works on those superficial cracks, and what this allows us to do is just fill those in and make sure that the water is not going to make the pavement any worse. And then that's followed by the slurry seal to really give it a great seal. My slides! Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm on slide 8, and it's got a video of the crack seal. It's so exciting.
Would we be able to just slowly go through the previous slides, if I may ask?
Maybe efficiently and not slowly.
Efficiently? Well, it's not. The reason I ask is because it's not hyperlinked on the agenda, so we haven't
I'm so
had that
sorry.
visual, that personal visual.
Yeah.
And there's so much work that went into this that I want to make sure we appreciate
Yeah.
it, of course.
To Councillor Schlack's point, I actually, Nicole was going to ask for you to forward the slides because for
Yeah.
some reason it's not in our packet.
I think because it was originally scheduled for December 17th, and then we got pushed to this meeting, so maybe that information
Just got lost in
didn't-
translation.
yeah.
But to his point, I think we'd all appreciate the work that you've done and happy just to have it forwarded
Yeah,
to us.
I can send that.
And the public, yeah, just to put it maybe into comments next time.
Okay. So, sorry, the volume might be a little weird, but here's a crew that's performing the crack seal, and we only, again, this is very minor cracks that they address. Any type of alligator cracking or anything like that, it's not worth the money to put into it. So we have inspectors that kind of follow them around. The hardest thing about crack seal is quantifying. So we do a couple test roadways and make sure that the contractors are, not overusing the product. But it's mostly just kind of, I think that's about right on how much we're expecting to use and how much we actually use. So. After crack seal, it's kind of a 2-step process. We do crack seal and then we do slurry seal. This is our biggest program, and it's for the residential streets. Again, it's not as rough as the chip seal, and all of our residents should be very familiar with this. We do this every 5 to 7 years, and unfortunately, it does require a 1-day closure, and that's been difficult to navigate with the residents, but we've been working on a robust communication plan, and so that's been helpful. The biggest thing I want to talk about with slurry seal is our streets crew and how much they do prior to the slurry seal. Those dig outs really do keep the pavement in a better condition so that I can continue to just slurry instead of having to do a rehab. And I got a video on the next slide of the slurry. This kind of looks actually provides kind of a UV layer, if you will, and protects the pavement underneath it, but it also provides a structural component to the roadway. Okay, next slide. The program, we expanded the program to chip seal this year, just for our commercial roadways, again, not within our residential, and the biggest takeaway that I learned last summer about the chip seal is really the need for the sweeper system. And it wasn't as bad with our commercial streets because there's, they can sweep a lot better than our residential streets. There's a lot less parking on those, but it actually went really quick. We did Tigard Street, we did Commercial Street. So if you guys have driven those lately, that was a chip seal project. And so if you have the higher volume of traffic, the chip seal is preferred. It's just a more robust process. And so the chip seal, I have a couple slides with the videos. The first part of the chip seal is they spray the emulsion down with spray bars on the back of a truck, and it's super smoky and hot. So hopefully the video works. So that gets applied on the whole street, and it's it's just so cool to watch it go. It's just the emulsion, so there's no aggregate in that. And then the next part is where they actually spread the rubberized chips, and they do a couple quick test patches to make sure that it's in the same area as the emulsion. And it's just like it's so quick. It's so much faster than slurry. Slurry has a dry time of about 4 hours, and with chip seal, we had traffic open right after the sweepers. Then the next slide is our rollers. So there's different types of rollers that go on it, and there's 3 or 4, and they really make sure those chips are embedded into the emulsion. This helps with chip retention. These rollers were so fun to watch. I took my 8-year-old with me. We were watching it together.
And if I may, is that a commercial and residential area?
This is right off of, oh shoot, where was this? This was off of Hall Boulevard. This is one of the business parks area. So this was, I think there weren't any houses on this one. There were side streets that went down to residential, but this particular street wasn't. And then the next slide is our sweepers, and this is the biggest issue that we have with chip seal is the chip retention. So the sweepers come right after this, which kind of blew my mind a little bit that the rollers were able to embed that much. You can see these very large sweepers coming through right after. So we went a step further and we did a fog seal after for chip retention as well. And it just makes the road look a lot nicer, but the fog seal, it's just almost like a paint, and it just keeps everything from any chips from coming up. And that was a recommendation. I reached out to other jurisdictions. There were a lot of claims on the chips embedded into tires and flinging up into cars. So the fog seal was something that we implemented as well. Okay. The rehabilitation is where you have to dig out either 2 or 4 inches and then replace it. You can also have to dig down all the way to dirt and put in your subgrade. A lot of tigered roadways in residential areas were built with 3 inches of pavement. And if you click on this slide, there's going to be some photos. So this one, you can kind of see this was 129th. It's a residential area, and we had to dig down all the way to dirt, and then we had to put our sub base and then the new pavement back on this was the fix. Okay, next slide. Another component of PMP is the striping program, and in years past, we were able to partner with Marion County. Unfortunately, they just didn't have the crew and the setup to work within our urban environment. Traffic would just kept getting worse every year for them, and they weren't able to work nights. So we piggybacked on a Lake Oswego contract that allowed us to use SPM, and they're a local company out of Tualatin, and they do striping, and they can work nights. And so a lot of our striping for the city is now going to be done at night and less traffic for them. And this is part of our safety requirements too. They use high-vis paint to make sure that those lane lines really show up. Okay, next slide. Public communications, this is something that we really push for. Our residents need to know what's happening. In years past, I was doing postcards or flyers, and then I didn't do that last year because we pushed for more onto our website, but we did do street Corex signs at the front of every, and this is specific to slurry. That's really where because of the impact and its large impact, that's where we kind of focus, is on the residential roads for slurry. So the Corex signs go in front of all the neighborhoods, and we do that 2 weeks prior. And then they have the no park signs out a week prior with the date, and then they get a door hanger the night before as well. The door hanger has all of our information on the website. The Corex sign has all the information on our website, as well as the no parks. Just really pushing everybody. We have our frequently asked questions on there. What do we do on trash day? How do we address sprinklers? Can we have access during an emergency? All of that stuff is on there as well. I think the biggest question I honestly have is for those residential areas that don't have sidewalk and they just can't park anywhere else. And so when that happens and there's a concern, we do half the street one day and then we'll do the half street the other day. So we really try to work with the residents on that. The project phone number on all of that information comes directly to me, and so I can return phone calls that same day. We also have the contractor, whoever wins that contract, they have their information on the door hanger as well, and the Corex sign. So multiple avenues of getting information or questions. Any questions on public communications? I'm going to go into years past if we're good there.
So Project Manager George, so when you say you're going into past year of the projects or past year communication?
Of the projects, I was going to show what we've been
any
doing.
questions regarding Councilor?
Me? Oh, okay. Oh, thank you. So last year there was some hiccup with the communication. So what lesson have we learned, and what are we doing differently next time to avoid those frustration from the residents?
Unfortunately, I get frustrations no matter what I do. It's true. I mean, I could tell them a million different ways and it's still going to come up short. I am going to implement the letters again. I wasn't seeing the benefit from last year, so I opted out, but I'll do those again, and those are going to go out. I'm working with our communications team. I want those to go out in March and April. The problem being is I just don't know exactly what streets we're going to do until I get that bid back and we go through that whole contracting phase. I don't know what alternatives are going to happen. And so I have to kind of blanket the communications a little bit and say your street might be done this summer. And so that's where the confusion happens early on. But again, I think our website is our best key. We work with GIS, we upload all the streets and they can type in their address and know what day is going to be closed when we know that information as well. And yeah, we'll just keep pushing that out.
I think there was some frustration associated with changing date at the last minute. So
yeah,
have they considered maybe a texting system, or people can opt in a text to receive real-time notifications?
Yep, we've tried that.
Okay. Oh well, it didn't work.
Yeah, no, we don't have a great system for it. We implemented Code Red one year, and we just got a lot of residents who didn't want that type of communication from that program. That program was specifically designed for emergency management. We automatically enroll our residents when they sign up for their utility bill. It's not something they opt in for pavement maintenance. So we had a lot of complaints that year. So we decided not to use Code Red again. If there is a weather delay, we make sure that street goes to the very end of our schedule, and all those same communications get redone. The Corex signs get updated, the no parks get updated, the door hangers come out again, and our website has a big block at the top. This was changed, as well as our GIS map gets changed, unless it's on a Friday, and then that just makes it a mess. But I get out there and update the signs as quickly as possible.
So the lessons just go to the website, right?
I try to push them all to the website. If there's any questions, I mean, that's the easiest way I can get information out to people. Yeah. I know the communications team, I'm meeting with Jessica next month, and we're gonna, lay it all out on how we're gonna do it. And she was gonna bring some examples and ideas to the table. So interested to have her help me with that.
Councilor Shaw, did you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I just recall there was, it wasn't just 1 day delay, a second delay, it was like 4 or 5 delays in a row. And they couldn't park for 4 or 5 days in a row. And I think you're referring to the same incident, and it was last year. And that's the one I think we're referring to, is what were the lessons learned there? Was it just a contractor whose workers didn't show up that day? Or what was that significant, consistent delay?
I don't recall a situation where they couldn't park on their roadway for numerous days. So for instance, if the slurry is delayed, we just push it to the end of the schedule, and they'll have a week or two to plan for that delay.
I think we could probably go back and look at records, but it was more of the work hadn't even started. It kept getting delayed, and they were being told, don't park. So there were folks for 4 or 5 days, according to the communication they had sent to us, that they weren't able to park, and they thought it was unreasonable without the communication. But we can get that information.
Construction is notorious for not starting or being on time, and totally open to more ideas on how to be better with the public, for sure.
Yeah, it might be an opportunity, Councilor Shaw, if you find that, or Councilor Hu, and then share that with Jessica. She does a fantastic job of being creative in how we communicate with our city. So maybe there's some opportunities there. Other questions from councilors? You all good? Okay, please continue.
Yeah, so hopefully this gets emailed to you guys. Next slide, I'll have a summary of the year, and then I'll have a photo of the map for the year. So 2021, next slide. There we go. Here's just a summary. And then if you go to the next slide, there's a map so it's easier to visualize, because you can't really tell from my descriptions. We did about 25 miles of slurry in 21. We did a 2-inch grind and inlay on 121st. And then we got to some of our residential backlogs, and you can see those in red. Those are our rehab. And so little sections of the city, that's our residential streets that usually don't get that full depth rehab, just because it doesn't benefit as many people. We try to do the rehab for our arterials and collectors, but we were able to get to some of our backlog in 2021, and that included Bonita, that Bonita is not a backlog street, Varnes and Alderbrook. So in Alderbrook specifically, we went down 12 inches to get that one to be up to design. So that was a fun one. Okay, next slide. Here's a summary of 2022, and on the next slide is the map. So again, I think this one we did about 23 miles of slurry. We did Upper Boones near Sequoia Parkway, and we did a grind and inlay there. And then we got to more backlog streets, which was Alderbrook Circle, Catherine, and 129th. We were also there were complaints on the Bonita rail crossing pavement in between the tracks. And so we worked with our street crews and the rail to get that little part of Bonita fixed where the rails were. Yeah. Okay, next slide. 2023. And for the last years, we did crack seal too. I just didn't have numbers for those. So I put numbers on here for crack seal. We skipped slurry for 2023 so that I could do a larger crack seal project to get us kind of 2 years ahead. There was a recommendation. I met with Washington County's maintenance, and they found better it was a better benefit to have your crack seal being driven on for a year or two before you did your slurry. And so my idea here was just to do a larger 2-year crack seal and then follow up with 2 years of slurry to allow that to be a better product. We did more backlog streets this year. If you want to go to the next slide on the map. So we did a larger rehab this year in 2023. And this also included, so our streets department reported back to us sections of the city that were kind of a larger patching job than they could achieve. So we partnered with the streets crew on, so those larger patches were also included in our rehab this year of 2023. So we did Oak Street from Hall to 90th. We did north of Oak Street is 87th, and then there was a little small portion of Oakway. Garden Place and 106th had large dig outs as well. So kind of hit a lot of sections of the city that year. Okay, next slide. And then this was last summer. So last summer we had a big delay in rehab. We reached out to Northwest Natural like we do every year, and I picked pretty much every street that they needed maintenance on. So Northwest Natural asked us to delay our rehab projects so they could go out and fix their lines, and those lines are being finished up next month. So I'll be able to address the rehab project starting in March. So it's kind of a weird year where my rehab's going to be starting when I'm going out to bid for this summer at the same time. But Northwest Natural's been great. They had to bury some of their lines, give residential new lines. Again, I picked these streets that they needed help with, but I got all my ADA ramps done that needed to be done for that rehab. So hopefully a little less inconvenience to the public when those rehab projects start in March. And the next slide is the map of all those. So you can kind of see where it's on in the city. And then this coming summer, we're putting together the package right now. On the next slide is the summary of that. We've got sections, next slide, sorry. We've got sections of Durham that we're finishing up. I'm trying to get buy-off from ODOT Rail on the 72nd rail crossing and do some pavement rehab there. Ventura Court, Carroll Court, and Catherine all have water projects going on, so I'm waiting to see how those are going. They should be a good timeline for me to do the rehab this summer. And then those spot grinding inlay off of Gardy that the streets crew has given me, and then we'll continue with our striping program. I did want to touch base on the next slide. Sorry, were there any questions about the program, what we've been doing? Okay. Yeah.
I was trying to look at my map on the phone, but on Durham, prior to Durham Elementary School, there was the sidewalk cutouts there. Is that where Northwest Natural, 'cause I know it took some time, so was it because there was a Northwest Natural line going through
No,
there?
that was just our ADA. So there were a very significant ADA improvements we had to do in that intersection. And I'm readjusting the striping to those crossings this week with SPM. And so that's all in preparation for the rehab, because rehab triggers all those ramps to be redone. It was a pretty large effort working with Washington County and making sure that there was also requests from the school to adjust the timing of that light and getting the queue out from the school during drop off and pickup. So a lot of coordination there, but all of that work is done. So now when we do the pavement, it'll just be really quick, hopefully, knocking on wood for your back. And so I've been trying to to make sure that we address some backlogs every single year. And again, the transportation demand score has really helped me with that, because there's not really a way to get a good priority list, if you will. And so these are some of the backlog streets that we have going on, and it's, you can see the PCI ranges, so these are, our city is doing very well. Let's just say that. Our streets are in great condition. You know, Street Saver is used by many jurisdictions, and we as a jurisdiction are very high on our PCI. But these are some streets that aren't doing so well. And so I wanted to show, you know, I know this is happening, and I want the program to help with this. And again, working with our street crews has been really huge in this, because if those PCIs are because there's just little spots that our street crews can do, and then I can get them back on our slurry list, that's a really big goal of ours. Yeah. So I'll try to blow that up and get a better document for you. Okay. And then the next slide was just asking for more questions if you guys had any follow-up.
So I don't have any added questions. I just appreciate Project Manager George talking about the pavement condition index and why the 80 is important, because it seems like just in my 2 years of experience at budget time, there's always that conversation, can't we just slide it down and save some money? And it really is the investment in the long run. And so really think that's important to always comment on, and where there's value in doing that. So thank you for that. And then I guess I'll just make one final round. Any additional questions? Councilor Hu?
Just a comment. Yeah, I think our streets are in great condition. And just to the member public who don't know already, Hall Boulevard is not under our jurisdiction.
It's not ours.
So yeah, not yet at least. So yeah.
Yeah,
So
and speaking of Hall, I'm working with our consultant right now on our next 5-year plan. And so we have a couple different scenarios happening with Hall, and those scenarios have helped with discussions on, you know, when we went to legislature and asked for that jurisdiction transfer. So being really involved in that, just understanding how it's going to affect our maintenance program, and starting to plan that ahead of time. So when that does come online, you know, we're not taken aback. So we also have a lot of streets from River Terrace that were built within the last 5-10 years that are now coming into our maintenance cycle. So really trying to put that as a whole and figure out our next 5-year plan.
really appreciate that. Thank you.
Councilor Shaw?
Promise one last question. We talk about how Tigard seats, and Councilor Hu mentioned it, are fantastic, except for Hall, which is an ODOT road. I'm just going to reinforce that. What are the other cities? Do you know, we say 80, we're high, we're among the highest of all cities surrounding us. Do you have an idea of what other cities are at, just a ballpark? And if not, that's okay too.
Yeah, I don't know exact numbers off the top of my head, but I do know that Street Saver gives us a report, and for our jurisdictional size, you know, we're in the 90th percentile. So that's the best I can do without reaching out to every single jurisdiction. But yeah, we're usually the PCI council goal is to get it to 70 on other jurisdictions. And yeah, so we've been able to maintain around 80.
Okay, I think that's a wrap on streets. Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Project. And we look forward to receiving the slides, and we'll make sure that they're posted so they're accessible to the public as well. So thank you so much. And given that there were no non-agenda items added, I entertain a motion for...
I move to adjourn.
I second it.
There's a motion and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous vote by the council. We are adjourned. Thank you all. Night, Tigard.